my mind's gone. Okay, here we go. All right then. Once again, we are back with another episode of the Uncivilized Art podcast. Messed up my intro, but whatever. I don't care. You know what? It is what it is. It's how we do it. You know what I mean? So we are back. We're back to be talking about the Spider-Man. The Spider-Man. I want to talk about Blow Spider-Man. Listen, I'm excited to talk about this. Let me calm myself down a bit. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Once again, back with Sweet Bundy. Big up, Sweet Bundy. How you doing today, sir? Appreciate you coming through again to talk about. Oh, it's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, you goddamn right. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about this, and we're going to try to say as much as we can about this. So yeah, we are going to be getting into spoilers and all that kind of stuff a bit later on. Before that, we'll do like a brief kind of non-spoiler review / opinion type thing before that. But before that, let's do a little catch up. What you've been doing, what you've been playing, what you've been watching, and of course, apart from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Bro, I've been sucked into Hogwarts. And mind you,
Okay,
I
yeah.
haven't watched Harry Potter. I haven't read Harry Potter. I only know the bare minimum of Harry Potter up until recently, where I started to dip into it. And, maybe one of these days I might watch the movies or read some more stuff. But I've been sucked into that game like crazy. It's just something about it where you just get immersed. And the story is not the best. In fact, the story is kind of, at least for me, because I think it's more interesting to people who are already into the lore.
Okay, yeah.
But meanwhile, I'm just like, okay, all right, let's get to the point. Tell me what to do. However, there are some moments. There's this certain storyline that's going on about, like, I don't know if it's a villain or somebody just powerful, but they're gone. But their background story is interesting, and anytime that cutscene happens, I turn off any distractions and pay attention. So it's something to keep me going. But man, I don't know. Maybe RPGs are just my thing, but Hogwarts, I've been pouring so many hours into that like crazy.
Yeah, Hogwarts is a game that I want to eventually get to. Long list of games I want to get through. That is one of them though. But yeah, I want to say I'm super familiar with Harry Potter. I have read one of the books and I've seen all the movies. So, I'm aware of it, right? I understand the story to some degree, but I believe this game isn't really sort of focused on the main story. Like, you play as a completely separate character just in the Hogwarts school, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
And I guess it's more about becoming your own grand wizard or something.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think it takes place before Harry Potter.
Okay, so it doesn't really link to that at all then. Well, I guess maybe in
at least I think so.
ways.
Remember, they're probably making so many references and it's just going over my head like crazy.
Could be. I would say that I mean, I enjoyed the movies. I thought they were okay. I only read one book, which was The Goblet of Fire, and I think that's the third or the fourth book in the series. It was a really good read. Like, and considering it's a children's book, it's quite long. It's like, I think it was around about 600 pages or something like that. So it's relatively long. But it was a really good read, and I'm like, I think I was maybe in my late 20s, 30s or something like that when I was reading that book. So this is not written for me at all. I'm way outside the age demographic. But yeah, it was a really good read. Like, I was into that book. I probably should get around to reading the others at some point as well, because yeah, that was just from beginning to end. I was like, you know what I mean? It was good. It was written well. I mean, I know J.K. Rowling has controversies.
Yeah, and that's what held a lot of people back from the game, unfortunately, even though she has no involvement with the game.
Yeah.
It was, not, we're not going to talk about it too much, but my
That's
opinion
a
on
whole
it
thing.
briefly is just we tend to have this, not, and I'm not saying we as in me and you, but
Yeah,
A
in Gen,
lot of
that's
people these days,
yeah, that's a side
they
tier in that
have
whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, they have a mentality like a mob mentality. Like, let's rally together and pretty much, in my opinion, bully someone into not doing what we think they should not be doing and
Hmm.
mission success. It was kind of crazy. It's a video game and it's a very good video game. And honestly, it should be contender for game of the year. And I feel like because of that controversy, that's what held it back and didn't
Hmm.
give it a chance to really bloom and set into people's minds. Um, because again, me as an outsider, not getting any of these references, I'm pouring hours into this game. I'm neglecting most other games that I have, and I have a whole library of games that I have to get to. But
Hmm.
I've been really playing that game heavily.
Yeah, I mean, I would say just kind of briefly as well, without getting too much into the whole controversy. Just kind of add to what you just said, like when it comes to that kind of mob mentality. I mean, I do believe that, of course, as an individual, of course, you have every right to decide whether you buy a game or don't buy a game for whatever reason you have, whether it's a political reason, social reason, or you just can't
Mhm.
afford it, or you just don't want to play it, or it just doesn't appeal to you. Like whatever reason you have to not want to play a game, that's fine. You're allowed to do that. I do feel like it does get a bit mad when you're encouraging others to not play it
Yeah.
or trying to like organize some kind of rally or tank the game scores. Or I'm not sure that happened specifically with this game, but I know it's happened with other
Oh
games. Um,
no, it did.
oh, it did happen with this game as well.
A
Okay, yeah, well,
whole lot
yeah.
happened. They even had a website where you could put in a Twitch user's name and it will search to see if they played the game or not,
Oh,
so
you
you
know what? I
could
think I heard
unfollow
about
them.
that actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I heard about that actually. Yeah, somebody set that up. But was like that, but yeah, that sort of thing's just mad. It's like
yeah,
because if I play a game and it turns out the game is made by somebody who has horrible opinions on a, a group of people or a particular group of people, you playing a game or me playing a game doesn't mean that you align with those opinions.
yes,
It may be that you didn't even know that they had those opinions, or even if you did know, it still doesn't mean that you're in support of it. Sometimes you just want to play a game. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You just want to play a game, and it sucks that they might have this view or that view. And I know there's this whole debate about whether she said what they said she said, and this. I'm not trying to get into that. Let other people argue that out.
yeah,
But I get it. It sucks when something's created by somebody that you has a views that you might think are horrible. But playing the game doesn't mean that you align with their opinions or in support of their opinions or anything like that. It just sometimes it could be just means you just wanted to play a game. It doesn't have to go any deeper than that.
yeah. And not only that, it's like you can't worry about the creator of something, you know.
Hmm.
And again, this game specifically was not made by her, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But just for the sake of saying it, you can't worry about the creator of something. If something is good or whatever, just value that. Who knows the morality of the person who created
yeah.
toilet paper, for example. I'm gonna wipe my ass with toilet paper. Like, I'm
I
not
mean,
gonna
it's
worry
it's, it's a
about
thing,
if
isn't
this
it?
guy
Like
was a racist or whatever.
the person who invented toilet paper could have been like a hardcore. I don't know who invented toilet paper, so I'm not going to make any accusations. But imagine like the person who invented toilet paper was this hardcore, racist, sexist, bigoted, everything, hates everything. So just a horrible, horrible person. But yeah, what are you going to stop wiping your ass? Like, I mean, to be fair, you should be
Exactly.
washing your ass though. If you want to talk about wiping, like, don't just wipe, wash. Like, because to me, dusty batties out there. You know what I mean? So
Oh, you have
wiping
to
is good, washing is better.
listen. This is why I
briefly get
recommend to
into
some people
briefly get into toilet habits right now.
in case you haven't done this at home yet. Okay, get yourself a shit rag.
A shit
Okay.
rag. Okay,
Yes.
you mean like a
Now,
literally a rag to wipe? Okay, I
not
get what you're
not
saying.
wipe, not wipe, but to wash. You
Okay,
should
right,
you
right, right.
shouldn't use the same rag specifically for your ass after you taking the shit. That you will use to wash your body. So you have a wash rag where you bathe your whole body, and then you have a shit rag where, okay, this is the rag that I'm going to use specifically to clean my ass after
Okay.
wiping. Do not, uh,
Yeah. Okay, I think
Hayes,
I know what you
we
mean.
no, not to you, but some people
No, no,
out
no, no,
there,
no.
yeah,
Yeah.
and don't feel embarrassed because we're not going to go ahead and gatekeep knowledge over here. Okay,
No, of course.
we're not gatekeeping any
Hey,
knowledge.
reach one, teach one. Was it teach one, reach one? One of them. But yeah, that. Yeah, I mean, we're
Okay,
spreading good
so
knowledge here. Cleanliness and hygiene. You know what I mean? You got to wash your batty out because if you don't
you
wash your
got
batty
to.
properly, you could get like all kinds of things. I was it like you're more prone to get what was it piles and no stuff like that, like bowel cancers if you're not washing your batty properly. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, this is it's good information,
or you could become a villain like Spot.
right? You know what I mean? Kicking your own ass into your holes. But yeah, man, it's like you could get like these bottles where it's kind of like a portable bidet where you fill the bottle up with water and then you squeeze it, and it just sprays the water out. So you just hold it and on your bum hole and just spray yourself, right? So, but yeah,
Oh, you're
wipe a
talking
little
about
bit
on
first.
the toilet.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so you wipe a little bit. After you take a shit, you wipe first, right? Wipe a little bit off first because you have to get like the main kind of doo doo chunks first, right? But then yeah, you get the bottle and you just hold that and you spray yourself to like really wash out, all like the little bits. I mean, you can also, I mean, if you got the money, you can get like proper hoses and stuff like that as well. But yeah, if you to save a bit of money, if you you get a bottle, fill it with water, spray yourself, and then yeah, get some more tissue, pat yourself dry, you know. But yeah, wash your batty out. Make sure you're washing your batty properly. Wait for Harry Potter to potentially raise some
some people
bigots
do have
to
to
how to wash
see.
your ass properly.
They have to see the outrageousness of it sometimes, and that's the
Yeah.
best way.
But yeah, no, for real though, it's like, I mean, I'm not against the idea of boycotting. Like I say, people can, not buy things if they don't want to for whatever reason. And of course, I do feel like there's, and a moment ago you talked about forget about the craze. I do feel like there are circumstances where it's like if there's something that really goes against your morals, like your true kind of hardcore morals. I get it, you know what I mean? There's certain things you just don't want to mess with, no matter how good something is. You know what I mean? I get it. But yeah, like it doesn't but at the same time, that's your own kind of viewpoint that you take for yourself. It doesn't mean that everybody else who goes to play that thing, must align with it. You know what I mean? It's not always that deep. I get it. So if something goes against your own kind of morals that you hold dear, and because of that, you don't want to mess with this craze because they just do something that you think is horrible, I totally understand that. But just because somebody else plays that thing, it doesn't mean that they're in support of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. And yeah, wash your ass. Wash your
Please
batty
do.
properly. If you take nothing else from today's podcast, make sure you wash your batty properly. Getting doo-doo chunks that stuck to your batty hairs for like weeks on end. Nah.
Just like a dirty ass dog, man.
Yeah, if you got dogs, wash their batties out too. And clip off your dogs. I see people who like where their dogs take shit. I think most people do clean up after their dogs, but every now and then you see somebody just like leaving it there. It's like, nah, clean up after your dogs, man. Come on, man. It's not.
Like a few years ago, I had someone that kept letting their dog shit in front of my house, and it was driving me crazy because I didn't have cameras in front of my house, so I couldn't see who it was. And it got to the point where it was like in winter, and I actually waited outside with gloves and my winter hat and everything bundled up, trying to stay warm, just waiting for that one person. And I saw somebody, they had their dog, and I thought it was them. So I said, "Hey, have you been letting your dog shit in front of my house?" Man, I was so paranoid and just angry. Don't do it. Just clean up after your dog. If you're not going to do that much, then keep the dog at home. And
Yeah,
if you're not going to want your dog shitting in front of your house or on your property, then exactly. That's how we feel. Please don't.
Nah, for real. Also for myself then, I've been a little bit busy actually, to be fair. I think I've been a little bit busy. So I'm wearing this t-shirt today. I went so this is a t-shirt for an artist called Zeo Zeonardo. I interviewed him last year, and he did a show in London a few weeks back, or a few weeks back as I'm recording this. As we're recording this, it might be more than a few weeks back. It goes live, but anyway, he did a show in London a few weeks back. So yeah, I went to go see the show, and I got this T-shirt there. And dude is amazing. So yeah, big up Zeo Zeonardo. If you haven't really checked that podcast out, make sure you check that out and check out his music as well. Dude is incredible. He's doing big things as well. So yeah, raw, you know. And what else? So I've been watching. I actually watched, Diabolical, the boys animated show. I watched that, and I also watched Gen V as well, the boys spin-off show. I actually ended up kind of binge watching it a little bit because my plans sort of end up changing, and so I had time. I was like, all right, well, might as well rest this. But yeah, it's pretty good though. Like it's a pretty good show, pretty solid show. I like, it's set in a college, so it's very much, college age, kind of drama. And because there's definitely some things in there that I think appeal more to the younger crowd. Well, I assume they do anyway. If anybody in that age group want to let me know, but yeah, I assume some of the things going to appeal more to the younger crowds. But yeah, overall, I thought they did a pretty good outing. It's very much its own story. It links kind of to the main show, right? But it doesn't rely on you having seen the main show. So it does tell its own story, and it kind of links in various parts here and there. Apparently season 4, I did read somewhere that season 4 of The Boys is going to take place or start, where that starts is going to be maybe a few days after the events of where Gen V ended. So perhaps there can be some things that happen in Gen V that get brought up in season 4 of The Boys and that whole thing.
Yep.
It seems that way anyway. I won't spoil it just too much, or I don't know if you've watched it or not, or if anybody's seen it.
I've watched it.
Oh, you watch it? Okay, so you know that. Cool. But if anybody hasn't, let me try and be a bit tame on what I say. But yeah, I'll say it's if you enjoyed the Boys, I think this is worth watching. Though I don't think you have to have seen The Boys to understand Gen V, because it's by and large its own story, its own characters, and its own thing, just with some links to some of the main events of the main show here and there. But Diabolical was pretty interesting as well. That's just like separate stories that are set in that universe. Apparently, only 3 of them are considered canon as far as the main story goes. And one of them was the last episode. I forget what it's called, but it's the one with Homelander. But yeah, there's like 3 episodes that are considered canon. The rest of them are just kind of, I guess, stories that they're telling. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It was, it was funny. It was interesting. Different styles of animation and that kind of thing, which is was pretty cool. But yeah, and it was short as well. Like they're like 15 minutes each.
Yeah.
So end up watching that, and I think at the end of the day, just jump on a treadmill, start running.
Yeah. It's pretty good, quick, and I enjoyed the Canon episodes, and I don't really remember too many of the others. Just little details, like I know there was this one anime episode I didn't really like, but I think it was the last one with the two two of the 7. Yeah, that one I really liked. But as far as Gen V goes, I was not expecting to like that as much as I did. The story sucks you in pretty quick, and these characters are really likable. Yeah, I like Gen V, and I recommend it to people.
Yeah, there was just go back to Diabolical. I think just remember that one episode, the anime one. I think you were talking about where it had like the man trying to save his wife. And I thought it was a really good episode. Actually, I actually really like that one. I really like the story they told.
It was like a robot or something.
It was like his wife had cancer, and he was trying to save her by giving her the compound V. He worked as a janitor in a vault, and so he knocks out the security guard to steal the compound V to give to his wife. And I'm blanking on how it ends, but I know he kind of gets chased, and then yeah, something comes. Some kind of it might have been a robot. I'm blanking on what exactly happens right now, but yeah, something happens where she ends up, fighting this thing to sort of
Hmm.
save. Then I think did they both die, or I've forgotten. My bad. I literally watched it like a few days ago, and I'm thinking, you know what it is when you watch so many things in a short amount of time, and it goes in and it kind of comes out a little bit. But yeah, I feel like she ends up dying in the end. Um, but I might need to rewatch just to kind of refresh my memory because I'm really blanking on how exactly it ended. Um,
Yeah,
but I
I
remember
know the
enjoying it. I remember
episode you're
liking the episode a
talking
lot.
about. I do remember feeling some type of way, not in a bad way, but like it was a sad, touching episode if I remember
Yeah.
correctly. And yeah, I just don't remember everything from that. And
Mm,
that's the one thing with Diabolical. It didn't really stay with me too much. Had some
mm,
great ideas, but it wasn't something on the level of like Marvel's What If, where that I
yeah.
remember the episodes. Not all, now, I can't remember each and every single episode, but about like 80%. Yeah.
Mm,
And I can't wait for season 2 of that. But not to digress too much. Diabolical is still worth the watch if you're, into the
yeah. Yeah.
boys. Yeah.
But I think that might be a problem with shows like that in general, where you do have episodes that tell different stories. It can sometimes, even though they're short episodes and all that kind of stuff, it can sometimes be a bit difficult to remember specifically what happens because you kind of watch effectively 8 different stories, that don't really have a connection to each other outside of being in the same universe, but there's still 8 different stories, 8 different sets of characters, 8 different sets of events, you know, and so yeah, I feel like it's kind of an issue with shows like that when you think about shows that don't have a sort of main kind of story arc throughout the episodes. It can be difficult to remember, at least in my experience anyway. It can be difficult to remember like individual episodes. You could just remember maybe that you liked something, or you can remember that you didn't like something. But in terms
Hmm.
of like what actually happened, I feel like it can sometimes be difficult to remember with shows like that. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm stupid and just forget things.
No, I mean, certain episodes just have to, set in your mind, or certain things have
Mm,
to set in your mind. I could remember something better than you, or vice versa, depending on the experience with it. That's all.
yeah, yeah. That's probably fair. That's probably fair. Depending on how much it kind of hits you and that kind of thing. You know.
Yeah,
Um.
exactly.
All right then. Well, let's move over to the main topic of the day. Spider-Man Across the Universe. Spider-Man, the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which we talked about, I guess now a few weeks ago. Um, and yeah, we got some things to say about this. But before we get into the main part of all the spoilers and the details and that, Mr. Sweet Bundy, for those people who haven't seen Spider-Man Across the Universe, give us a very brief, non-spoiler review slash opinions of the movie.
So, Across the Spider Verse, honestly, is way more action packed, and anything that I'm praising about this in comparison to the previous one does not, you know, s- in any shape or form make it, am I suggesting that the first one wasn't good enough? No, the first one was incredible. This one
Mm,
just takes it up to the next level. It does everything that the first one did, but better. It's an improvement, it's an upgrade. And it's like the emotions that you're going to feel during this movie, you're not going to really expect too much. Um, the character development of not just Miles, but his parents, and seeing the relationships between these characters and their parents and their friends and the others, spider people and everything. It's touching, it's engaging. It's a long movie, but the entire time it's moving, and it slows down at the right moment, so you're not feeling like you're just rushing through it. Some movies they feel like they have to keep moving, keep bouncing, and keep talking. This movie knows when to stop, take a breath, and just let you sit in that moment and really take in what's going on. Um, Most especially what I love more than anything, besides, yeah, you got great action, great fighting sequences, and the animation is spectacular. I'm telling you, like, it's mind-blowing at times at what they accomplished here. The artwork, all the designs, the colors, the different types. It's so much to go into, which we will. But honestly, it's the characters themselves, and hearing how each character has their own argument for where they stand, and it's nothing where it's like you're looking and you're like, no, you're wrong, and that's that. With the exception of a few villains maybe, but they pose a question where they're like, is this guy really wrong? And I can't go into too much details about it, but yeah, yeah. I mean, it's already been in the trailer where you have Miguel O'Hara. So getting to see his argument and where he stands and the reasoning behind his decisions and why he's doing the things he does, completely understandable, completely. And yeah, this movie blew me away. If you're into characters, like a character driven story, this is it.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that. I think uh, it's about as perfect a sequel as I think you can realistically get. And what I mean by that is it follows on. I mean, of course, sequels follow on from the original. But what I mean, it just follows on really well from the original. Um, and Lee, uh, well, let me not say too much, just in case that's kind of a spoiler. But it follows on very well from the original. Let me just say that for now. In a sense that if you've seen the original, this feels like a real continuation of that. And I think that's something that lacks in a lot of sequels. They can often feel too disjointed. This one feels like a real continuation, but also I feel like it still does enough to be its own story. So if you haven't seen the first movie, sure, you can watch this and you can understand it for what it is, and it's fine, right? It's still good. It's still a movie. It's still a story. Great, but you miss so much if you haven't seen it because it follows on so well, and it really does feel like. I mean, I believe it's been announced that they're making a third one, but it really does feel
Yeah.
right now that this could be one of the greatest trilogies, if not the greatest trilogies ever. And they haven't even released a third movie yet. Do you know what I mean? It feels like this could be that. This could be that because we've had lots of trilogies, in the past, loads of 1, 2, 3, part 1, part 2, part 3s, and lots of them have been good. Some of them have been great. This one, in my opinion, even though they haven't released a third one, even though there could be potential delays with those strikes going on, or I mean, the strikes just ended, I guess, but even still, they're going to have some kind of effect on what they're doing, and this happening. So it may be a while before we get to the third one. Right now, after watching Into the Spider-Verse, after watching Across the Spider-Verse, in my opinion, I feel like this could be one of the greatest trilogies of the last 10 years, maybe even 20 years, maybe even ever. This feels like that right now. Of course, I mean, the third movie could absolutely suck, but it's possible. I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. But let's be real, it is possible.
It is.
But that's how it feels right now. Um, yeah, I think they just built on the original so well. They seem to be going into the next one really well. Like you said, it was intense. It had some surprises. Maybe a few things here and there. maybe they could have tweaked, maybe it could have been better, who knows, but it certainly wasn't, anything that ruins the movie. I think everything they did kept it flowing in a really good way to just kind of follow the story along. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. It does not feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes. It just feels and just flows so well with the action, with the sequences. I really liked the villain, but I will save my full opinions to later on, because everything I've got to say about the villain is a spoiler. So we'll say that later on. I'm just going to say I like the villain for now. But yeah, if you've seen the original, I imagine you've probably already seen this one. If you haven't seen the original, sure, you can watch this one without it. But honestly, watch that first, watch this second. It just builds on so well from it. The first movie was great. This movie is fantastic, and yeah, I am really looking forward to the third one, Beyond Spider-Verse, for whenever that comes out. Hopefully it doesn't get too delayed. Hopefully, but yeah. But yeah, that's the non-spoiler bit. Yeah, we need to get into this now, because like I said, there's just so much to say about this movie, and
it is.
All right, so I wanna start with my favorite question that I ask. What was your biggest takeaway from this movie?
Honestly, it's to value. I feel like it's teaching everybody a lesson, or supposed to teach everybody a lesson, to value what you have. Because looking at Gwen's situation, or even Miles' situation, with their father's lives at risk. Part of the reason why Gwen, because the first time I watched the movie, I thought, oh, that's dumb how like Gwen left because she, her father caught her being Spider Woman, and um, he was going to arrest her or anything or something like that, and she just didn't want to confront that. I thought that was the reason, but after watching it a second time and all that, I feel like the real reason was, yeah, that was part of it, but she was also afraid of continuing that that destiny, or that canon event, that her father was supposed to die. And she felt like, well, if I'm not there, then there's no reason for that to happen. So in a way, I'm saving his life. So that's at least my theory on it. But with Miles, on the other hand, his father's at a threat, and he didn't really want to open up to his father because the whole Spider-Man thing and being afraid of that. But now that he knows, okay, my father might die, he knows, okay, I got to open up to him. I got to let him in. And the same thing with Gwen, which I like. It's almost like their stories are in a parallel, right? But it's about, to me, valuing who you have and knowing who you have in your corner. You can't just keep someone at a bay because of fears and everything, because once they're gone, that's it. And Miles already kind of learned that story with his uncle and everything. So, but still, sometimes you just got to repeatedly learn a lesson before it really sets in stone for you. I feel like with his uncle is different, because his uncle is playing a dangerous life. And with his father, yeah, his father's life is dangerous too, but it's more like you don't really expect that to happen to someone like him, because he's a cop and he's all about justice and everything. And Miles is getting a little more confident in his skills, where he's like, yeah, I won't let that happen. Even now, like, he's going back and he's insisting, like, yeah, I'm gonna save my father. But it's like with I forgot how to pronounce his name, but the Indian Peter Parker.
Oh, Pat Bear.
Yeah, if they never showed up, right? Even though he's there, that guy still dies, right? So for Miles, even if he's there, his father can still die, because it's a canon event. and the canon takes, is a part of you being there. Now, yeah, you could be there to prevent it, but that's the chance of it. My point is just Miles has a lot more growing to do, but he's getting there, and he's starting to realize. And I feel like, especially with this whole meeting his alternate self, that's going to come into play, because he's seen a version of himself like, damn, okay, I lost my uncle, you lost our father and everything. He's looking in a dirty mirror, so to speak.
Mm. Yeah. Actually, sorry, real quick, I need to correct myself. It's actually Pavitr, not Pavitr. Pavitr. For
Okay.
this book, Pavitr Prabhakar. But yeah, I think that's a big theme in the movie. This idea of loss and
Yeah.
understanding what you have, and the people closest to you. And I think there's this kind of theme they kind of run about the idea of Rio knowing that Miles is lying, but perhaps not wanting to admit that to herself. Like the teacher mentions it to her, he's lying to you, and you know it. And at the end, Miles mentions it as well. I've been lying to you, and I think you already know. And it's this kind of thing about, like, he knows what he's doing in terms of he being Spider-Man, and of course he can't just tell them that because it could put them in danger. And that's kind of the whole thing about wearing a mask, keeping the people close to you safe, because if they know who you are, people might hurt them to hurt you. So yeah, there is it's kind of keeping them at a bay, keeping them at a distance in terms of what's really going on, but also it's keeping them safe as well. So there's that line that that they're drawing when it comes to being a superhero, being in this sort of line of existence, is that, like, there's only so much you can tell the people closest to you without putting them in danger. But then you are lying to them. Bottom line is that you are lying to them. You are keeping something from them. You are, whether for good reasons or bad reasons, you are not being truthful with them. And if you're not being truthful with them, you're not being completely open. And if you're not being completely open, then the idea of love and how you love your family is different as well, because you're not allowing them to connect with you as fully as they could, and you're not connecting with them as fully as you could. And even though it's done for good reasons, that's still what's happening. But then you have Miguel, who says something as well about that, the whole thing about being Spider-Man is sacrifice. And perhaps as part of the sacrifice that you make is that you have to keep people at a distance,
Yeah.
because if you don't, they could be killed. So yeah, it does come up in an interesting way about family and being close to family, but also keeping that family at a distance. And Gwen, when she lets her dad know that she was Spider-Woman this whole time, and how he handles it. He's a cop. Like he's like 100% cop. How long have you been lying to me? You have the right to remain silent. And a lot of that, I feel, is coming from this place of just not knowing what to do, because ultimately even though whether she killed Peter Parker or not, she has still been breaking the law. Spider-Woman or Spider-Man or Spider whoever, technically they are criminals. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
working outside the law. So there is that as well, that he has this whole thing about this oath that he has to uphold, and he can't make exceptions even for family. If they break the law, he has to arrest them. But that's his daughter. So now he's faced with all these kind of different choices and different views, and how you handle that in a moment is not always going to be the best way or the right way. And it does take him a while, maybe even months, because he was gone for Gwen was gone for a while before they talk again. So it took him a while to kind of get to that point where it's like, what, I just can't be a cop anymore. I
Yeah.
just can't do this anymore. And it was having that conversation where that finally sort of pushed that decision to, I just can't do this. I'm gonna have to quit. he kind of saves his own life without realizing because he's not the captain. But, it can take that. You know what I mean? It's not always something that happens right away. And I think sometimes we do kind of get obsessed with this idea of what you say in a moment is your right, is how you truly feel, and that's not always the case. It's just that you have to consider things like what is your what are your values? You know, why did you even become in the case of a Captain Stacy or Officer Lieutenant Stacy? You know, why did you become a police officer in the first place? You know, and do you make exceptions for family if they are breaking the law? Because the moment you do that, you know, it opens up everything to, you know, corruption and people you've arrested who've maybe done similar things and opening that whole thing up. So yeah, like it can sometimes take this moment to be like, or more than a moment to be like, I'm now faced with a whole lot of choices that I've never even thought about. I never even thought what I'd ever have to think about. And now in this very moment, you're having to make a decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, his decision was, at least in that moment, was to try and arrest her. But of course, yeah, it took a while to be like, you know, I just can't do this. I'm gonna have to quit being a cop. I can't be in this job knowing that you're doing this, knowing that I'm having to either arrest you if I'm going to hold true to my values, or I'm going to have to break my values, and I can't do that. And his ultimate answer was, I'm just gonna have to quit being a cop. You know, so yeah.
Yeah. I
But
feel
yeah.
like the relationship between both of them, it's very powerful. In fact, the story pretty much opens up with that. Uh, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
the use of colors was perfect. I love the fact that, like, you know, she didn't hesitate to hug him
Mm,
on both occasions. You know, you know, I just loved it. I loved what was going on between them. You know, and I understood his point of view, because for him, he saw a change in his daughter the moment her friend dies, and he assumes that it's Spider Woman, and anybody in that position would go ahead and think that. You could go ahead and say, well, you know, obviously she's a hero, but still, things could go wrong, and that was
mm,
the whole point of, you know, you have a cop, and then you who's a trained professional at this, and then you have, you know, a vigilante that you know nothing about. They
mm,
could flip at any moment, and if they do, all you know is they're called Spider Woman and they wear this mask. Anybody could wear that mask. So I get it. I get why he's like, you know, determined to catch Spider Woman, and then when he finds out that it's his daughter, he doesn't know what the fuck to think at that point.
mm,
So he's just trying to do you know, what he's supposed to do. He goes by the, you know, by the books. He goes in default mode. And I don't think that he would have taken her to prison and everything and all of that. I think he just needed a moment with her to really assess what happened and process it. Um, but yeah, I get where he's coming from. He wasn't being an asshole or anything, and I love that their, you know, relationship quickly resolved the moment she got to see him again, and you could tell, you know, she's still a teenager. You know, she's still growing up. She's just still getting there. So, you know, she acts like a brat about it a little bit at first,
mm.
but you know, she just wanted to be with her father again, and that's why, you know, she pulled him in for the hug, and it was a perfect callback to the first time she hugged him. I loved
Mm.
it.
Yeah, there was a few scenes like that actually, or one in particular that kind of stood out to me towards the end with Miles when he sees Rio and he's talking about how, you know, everything that she said to him about, you know, you know, I met all these people, these amazing people, and saw these amazing things, but they didn't want me, and I beat them all. And it was something about the way he stood when he said that. Like it's a kind of a very subtle movement, but he stands up just a little bit straighter when he
Yeah.
says that, you know, and it kind of just feels to me like there was that moment of understanding of everything that his family been saying to him, everything that or in particular, or Rio in particular, his mother's been saying to him, or Mrs. Morales. He don't like be called by her first name. So, Mrs. Morales been saying to him. But it was just something that you kind of feel in that moment when he says, "I beat them all," and he understood it about the whole thing about when at the party she was talking about this isn't just your life. It's your abuelas and abuelos. And everybody who's worked hard to put you in a position you have, that the opportunities that I didn't even have, to be in that position that you are, and everything that's kind of happened, all this kind of history that they've had to go through to get Miles into that position. And I feel like that's that moment where he's understanding it all, and like I say, it's just a very subtle thing, and they don't bring it up, they don't mention it, but that's just how it felt to me when he just stood up just that little bit straighter, as he said, "I beat them all," and he looks over at his mother.
Yeah.
Though of course we know how that scene played out, so it didn't quite go the heartwarming. But yeah, we'll come to that in a little bit. But yeah, there's certainly a few kind of moments with the family where it just feels like there's this connection going beyond what's being said in the film, or an understanding that's going beyond what's being said in the film. In those moments, I felt.
Yeah. Like, and the movie is filled with moments like that where again you have these characters discussing things with each other, and that there's always more to say, there's always more that they want to do, but it's about the right time and about having the courage to do it in the first place, like especially between Gwen and Miles. Gwen, in my opinion, I feel like Gwen has strong feelings for Miles just like he has strong feelings for her.
Mm.
And it really shows how, like, they told her, go there, but you can't see him. You cannot
Yeah.
see him. You could go ahead and go, but you can't see him. And she went anyway. And yeah, she still got the mission done, but she wasn't supposed to meet up with him.
Mm.
Um, and when she sees like the book of the drawings of her, she didn't freak out or go like, that's weird or anything. No, she liked it.
Mm.
She was teasing him a little bit. And you know, not only that, if you notice, her hair, like she kept it, where it's half cut
Yeah.
off,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because
Yeah.
she's probably thinking about him just like he's thinking about her. In fact, I think she is, because if I'm not mistaken, she brought him up when she was doing, her intro. So yeah, I really like their relationship that's brewing, and um it just sucks because you could tell that she's still afraid. She's afraid to go, and that's another thing, like how Miles is afraid to open up to his parents.
Mm.
How she's afraid to open up to her dad. It's a lot that's going on, and I love that. Miguel's afraid, and you know what's funny? The one guy that you would expect to still be scared, he's not scared, and that's Peter B. Parker. Peter Parker
Okay.
from,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, because now he has his daughter and everything. So his life is like great. He has Mary Jane, he has his daughter, and it's all because he faced his fears and he did what he had to do. He stepped up and he got his life together. So
Mm.
throughout the movie, he's happy. Even when things are going bad, he's like, well, it could be worse.
Well, as a father of a daughter and a son of a mother. Yeah. Um. Yeah. I was just thinking about Peter B. Parker. Actually, yeah. I guess he wasn't. Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah, he wasn't really afraid. At least not, certainly not noticeably anyway. In the movie, like he comes across as a little bit more confident. A little bit more well, trying to be helpful. you know. And compared to in the first movie, where a lot of his action was driven by fear of messing things up, and maybe there's like a hint of that still there, because he does talk about, you know, do you think I'll be any good, when he's talking to Mary Jane and he's with the daughter in the crib and he says, do you think I'll be any good at this? And she's like, oh, you asked that question now, so maybe there is still a little bit of a hint of a worry, but yeah, I think overall, certainly any kind of like major way, like, he probably didn't. He didn't. I don't think he did come across as came across as being more confident, so certainly more outwardly more confident than he was in the first movie. But it made sense, because his last bit in that movie was about realizing the advice that he was giving Miles was the advice that he needed to take himself. About taking that leap of faith, and well, he did. And then, well, I guess he kept taking that leap of faith and kept reminding himself, well, assumingly he did that.
Yeah, I feel like now he's that Peter Parker Spider-Man that we've already knew, what we expected. Just a little more older, a little more, with even more responsibility, being his daughter and everything.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Miles specifically now. Then, being the star of the show, of course. You mentioned a little bit about Miles's development. What would you say stood out to you the most about Miles's development between the two movies?
Man, when I saw him in that fight scene with Spot, I was just proud. Like the way how he was moving and everything, he had style and all that. He rolled into that so smooth, and it was believable. But it was also great because you got to see, like, I watched the movies back to back, right? And you just see like the difference. Yeah, don't get me wrong, he had it together in the end in the first movie, but this is on the next level. The way how he's moving and everything, it was like watching fluid, just move. He was moving like water, man. But besides that part, I like the fact that he was more outspoken in this movie. I feel like, he was quick to let you know what he was thinking, like how he felt. Speaking up, even to his parents a little bit. He spoke up to his parents a little bit, and that just goes with anybody.
Much,
yeah, if it was any other movie, he probably would have got a smack upside the head or something. But I'm glad they didn't go that route. I'm glad that they showed like these parents, they're just wholesome parents, and they're just trying to lead him the right way. But at the same time, they're scared. The father has his own worries about the relationship between him and Miles, and the mother does too. And they're just trying to make this work. And also Miles's mother, Rio, she's afraid of letting go. Like how she doesn't want to let him go to New Jersey, for example. But he's so ready to jump into it. Whereas, Miles from the first movie probably would have been hesitant too. But that's the importance of letting your child grow and develop so they could go ahead and start moving out the damn nest themselves. And you can't hold them back. You can't.
Yeah, definitely was funny actually, where Miles as Spider-Man is talking to his dad, and he's saying, "Well, speaking as an objective observer with no skin in the game, maybe you gotta let the kid spread his wings like this," because it's like he's effectively given his dad advice on how to handle him. But it wasn't bad advice though. Like you say, like there is a part where you kind of need to let go and let them do the thing. I think Miles had a really great speech actually when he said in the class in the principal's office about there's people who can teach me the things that I want to learn, but they're not here in Brooklyn. They're not all here in Brooklyn. And I feel like that, for me at least anyway, just kind of hit quite hard, because it's like that's how I think a lot of times people feel when it comes to, going to, college or uni, or anything that you want to study, and you kind of looking at it like, if you, well, or not just, or it's just any kind of skill you want to learn, we're looking at it like, okay, there's something that you want to do, there's something that you're passionate about, and but you're looking around, but you can't do it in your hometown, so you have to find somewhere else. So you got to make that decision. It's a big decision, right?
Yeah.
You hear about people who move to LA because they become actors, because like where they live, the opportunities to become an actor just non-existent. So they save up all their money, pack up all their belongings, and move to this big city, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like that, except more for academia in this case. But it's still a big move, and it's still a big scary thing. And like you say, Rio having this hang up about letting go. Um, and I mean, they don't go into details as to why that is. Of course, we could speculate, but you'd imagine there's things in her history and things in her past about moving. Make perhaps it could go into, you could get to things like feeling. I mean, again, this is not mentioned in the movie. This is speculation, but it could be perhaps related to feeling like an immigrant in a country where you're not an immigrant. When the principal talks about struggling immigrant family, and she's like, well, we're actually from Puerto Rico. But at the same time, it's like that could be part of you know that struggle, because you don't also talk about your brothers and everybody who's coming to get everybody's history, you got your position. So this could be all part of her thing about letting go, because like she's
Yeah.
been through all these struggles, we've been through all these having to battle for your acceptance, and people seeing you as an other, even though you belong here, and that whole thing. In fact, I think she says something similar to Miles as well, about never letting people feel like you don't belong. So yeah, perhaps that all ties into why she has this difficulty letting go, but also knowing that, or at least on some level, understanding that she has to.
Yeah. You know, it's hard to, at least for the first time, and for some people, each and every single time, it's hard to move on from your home,
Mm,
especially if you are not, if that's your first ever time. The later it is, the harder it is to move on from what you've known all your life.
mm,
And especially for the parents too, like some parents, they can't wait to get their kids out the house. Yeah. But in the case of Rio, she's one of those parents that's like, I raised him right, but you know I'm not. I'm not going to be there to protect him. I can't be there to protect him. He has to fend for himself if
mm,
he goes elsewhere. And am I ready for that? Is he ready for that? I feel like these are all questions and worries that this character has, and she doesn't have to have like this moment where she's just blurting it all out, and it feels like exposition. You can
mm.
see through her actions and just interpret it your own way.
Yeah.
One person might say, "Oh, she's being overprotective." Well, me, I don't feel like she's being overprotective. I feel like she's just worried. She loves her son very much, and she's very protective, but not overprotective. Because she's
Mm.
willing to let him do, like even with Gwen. He's supposed to be in the room grounded,
Yeah.
and she let him, wander off with some random girl. Like Rio is not uptight or anything. But I will say as a disclaimer, I haven't seen anybody say that, but I'm just saying for the sake of saying.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt like, and I guess with a lot of the characters in the movie, is that there's a lot said without being said, and I appreciate that in filmmaking, because sometimes I do feel
Yeah,
like with films they can explain things just a little bit too much, and you just kind of feel like you're being spoon fed. Like this does. I believe allow you to kind of, yeah, you can kind of come to your own interpretation a little bit with some of the things. But yeah, it's like it's there, but it's not there. And I think there is that with a lot of the characters, in terms of like trying to understand why they are the way they are. And I didn't get the feeling of her being overprotective. in almost, I felt like she was the right amount protective. Like, she was like the the appropriate amount of protective, because without at the risk of sounding a little bit sexist, you typically have the mother who's more unwilling to let go than the father, right?
Yeah.
So that's in itself is maybe the more typical side of things. But then she does have these moments of, where she ungrounds him, because, like, he does need to spread his wings, and maybe being a little bit more lenient in those moments, because I think she's seeing something in him. Perhaps on some level she's seeing that, because I kind of have a theory that she already knows that he's Spider-Man, or at the very least she knows that he's doing something big, because things like being willing to unground him, and those moments of kind of being a little bit more lenient when Jeff was kind of being a bit harsh, and there was a moment where I guess, to be fair, this was probably supposed to be Miles' imagination, but maybe it was a memory. I'm not sure. But there's a moment near the beginning where Miles is kind of contemplating the idea of telling his parents that he's a Spider-Man, right? And before that, though, there's a bit where Rio says, "I heard he's Puerto Rican." And he's like, "Oh no, he seems more Dominican to me," like that. So I feel like there's that to me is like maybe subtle hints, and along with people, that say, not people, the principal saying, he's lying to you, and I think So I feel like these are maybe subtle hints that Rio knows that he's Spider-Man, but maybe not knows, but maybe suspects that he's Spider-Man, but hasn't quite, confirmed it yet, or at the very least suspects that he does something big and heroic, and that's why she was maybe more willing to kind of like let him go and do those sorts of things, because even though she might not know specifically what he's doing, she kind of believes that he's doing something amazing.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's an interesting theory that Rio might actually know already. Yeah, that's the first I even crossed my mind. I feel like that scene where he's like, I mean, she's talking with him right after Gwen left, right? Right before she's gonna tell him, you could go after her. I feel like, that discussion could be a hint as well. Now that you mention it, for me, I just took it plainly and bluntly, like, okay, we're obviously talking about the whole him going to a new school, but now that you mention it, it might be, a subtle hint about, like, hey, if you're Spider-Man, it's okay.
Yeah. But yeah, but like I say, I mean, I think the film definitely does do a lot of things in terms of like saying stuff without saying stuff, So, I mean, well, I guess it always be seen, really. So always be seen when by the time Beyond drops. But for now, we're just speculating. I've got a few more speculations to come as well, so we'll get into all that in a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Spot now, though, because Spot is. I think he just might be one of my favorite villains. And he's a villain. I mean, I don't know if he's in the comics. I'm not familiar with the comics, so perhaps I haven't checked him out. I might do a quick research here.
He
actually, he is. Okay, cool. But yeah, I really just liked how they introduced him and how they developed him all in one movie with very little screen time. Because he's not on camera that much in the whole sort of 2 hours 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But they do a lot with him in the relatively short amount of screen time that he has, in terms of introducing him, developing him, and letting you know that he isn't just a villain of the week. Like, he literally starts off as like this throwaway criminal. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Throwaway criminal. He's in this week, out already, and new criminal next week. And he's even got a dumb name, Spot, like whatever. Sounds like a dog. You know what I mean?
I mean, they actually did have a book um, named Spot. And it's about like this little dog just doing random shit. It was a children's book.
Oh yeah. We had it as well.
Yeah.
Spot the dog. Yeah, Spot the dog. Little Labrador, I think it was, or something. But yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that. um, but yeah, it's like he just starts off as this like criminal. There's a throwaway criminal, and then over the course of the movie, with a few scenes that he has, like they develop it into this real big bad. You know what I mean? Like where by the time he gets to the end of it, it's like he's a threat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not just a throwaway criminal. He practically never was. You know, he is a threat, and you understand that by the time you get to the end. It's clear, you know. And I just thought that was really cool and really amazing how they did that with, you know, quite short amount of screen time and not really. I mean, you know a little bit about him in terms of he worked at Alchemax. He was in the explosion when he was there when Collider exploded. He even said something about Miles throwing a bagel at him or something like that while he was running through the cafeteria.
That's how he came to be.
Yeah, and it sounds all like whatever, right? But then at the same time, it's like that is his origin story. It might be a basic origin story, but that's his origin story. And from that, it's like he's been so like angry because he's lost his face, he's lost his job, he's lost his ultimately his normal existence.
Lost his everything.
Yeah. And we're laughing at him when he gets introduced. He's got like the bread coming out of his holes and all that kind of stuff. He can't really steal the money. We're laughing at him, but he has lost everything. And that is a legit reason to be angry at somebody. You know, even if Miles didn't necessarily do it deliberately, you know, granted, he didn't know he was there, or we assume he didn't know he was there. You know, the point is like that doesn't matter. You know, it's like Miles still did that. Miles still blew up the reactor while he was there, because you got to think. I mean, there's this movie called Clerks by Kevin Smith back in like 1991 to early 90s, and one of the scenes is them talking about the Death Star exploding, being blown up, and how on that ship, on the Death Star ship, there would in Return, excuse me, in not the first Death Star, the second Death Star, in Return of the Jedi. Wait a minute. New Hope, Empire. Yeah, Return of the Jedi, where it hasn't been fully completed yet. So when they blow that up, there would have been like just, you know, contract workers and, you know, construction workers, people just going about their day, just people just working there. You know, they don't necessarily have any connection to all this stuff going on. They're just hired to do a job, you know, right? And they would have been on that when it blew up. All those guys would have been killed too. And that's kind of a similar thing with this. It's like, I mean, at the moment, I mean, maybe in the comics I'm not familiar with the comics, so perhaps in the comics he's like a real evil dude. I don't know, perhaps, maybe. But as far as these movies are concerned right now, you know, Into Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, leaving the comics alone for a moment, as far as these movies are concerned right now, he's just a guy that was there working. You know, he's not necessarily connected to everything that the Kingpin was trying to do. He was just working on the multiverse and that whole dimension things, which could be a cool thing. He could have been there for noble reasons. You know, we understand he had a family, because he's mentioned that he lost his family. Like, so like, he's just a guy trying to do his job that gets caught up in this exploding collider, and now his whole world has changed. You know, that's a legit reason to be angry, but we're laughing at him in the beginning because he's got bread falling out of his holes and can't steal money. So it's like they take this guy, who has legit beef, make him come across as a joke. And to be fair, I guess you would, because he's relatively new. It would have been a year or so since, because I think it's about a year later since these events. So he's relatively new to the criminal stuff, and I guess he would have been hiding for a lot of that time because nobody even knows he's around. So he's relatively new, so he's kind of stumbling around a bit. That makes sense. Yeah, we laugh at him, and that's kind of the issue as well. When you hear his story, people kept laughing at him. They kept treating him like a joke. So like we get to the end of the movie, and we understand this guy is a threat. And I feel like we go through, the audience, we go through a similar revelation as Miles does, you know, in terms of not taking him seriously. thinking he's just another joke criminal, to understanding this guy can and will take everything from you. You know what I mean? And to do that in a space of one movie with relatively small amount of screen time, it's like, bruh, they knocked it out of the park with this criminal. I really feel like they just, with this guy.
I feel like it's also a parallel between him and Miles when you think about it, because talking about the first movie, Miles was clunky and clumsy, and they even did the whole frame trick where how he moved at a different frame rate than the other spider people, and they didn't do the frame trick with Spot in this movie or anything, but what I'm talking about is the fact that Spot is trying to figure shit out, and then he starts to really focus, and each time we see him, he's getting better and better and better until he becomes this menacing force. And that's the scary part. It's like, okay, shit. We could have done something before, but now, we created a super villain.
Yeah, we legit created a monster. But yeah, he I mean, could they have done something though? You think like it could have just needed you think he could have just apologized in the beginning, and you think that could have been it? I don't know. I'm not sure that would have stopped him.
I feel like at that point when they first met, if he had just respected Spot, like, hey, what's going on, man? Talk to me. They could have had a one-on-one talk and everything, and things would have went, because he wasn't too far gone at that point. I think it was more like once Spider-Man kept, making a joke out of him and, embarrassing him, then he discovered his powers. And then once he realized the potential of it, because, at the end of the day, he's an intelligent guy. He's a scientist. He's a goofball when it comes to physical stuff. But once he mastered that, that was it. Yeah, now we get to see his full potential. But that could have been prevented had he just been treated with some kindness and treated like a normal person and offered help instead. I feel like Miles, you can't expect him to do that at this young age. He's still a kid himself. Even Peter Parker was like that before, but as he developed, as he got older, and and started to understand these villains more, he started to take a different approach and try talking to some of them. There's certain villains that he would talk to. The best hero that goes by that is like the Flash, at least when it comes to, and not to get too off topic, but at least when it comes to the iteration of him in the Justice League Unlimited series, the animated series. His villains, they even had an episode about it where he just goes and talks to them. He's like, hey man, you've been off your meds again. And he's not even joking around with them. He's like legitimately concerned. And the guy's like, yeah. He's like, listen, I'm going to let you drink here, but you got to go back and take your meds and do what you got to do. And he thwarted a whole boss battle and everything and all of that, just by showing some kindness. And I feel like Spider-Man does pretty much the same thing. And Miles needs to do that with this guy, but I don't know. At this point, it's different. At this point, it changed.
I mean, he is 15 years old. He's basically an adult. So you should know. But no, I get you. Yeah, I mean, I think, there's probably truth to that. Like at that point, earlier on, perhaps he could have talked him out of it had he been somebody who was maybe a bit more in tune in that way. Because he still knew. Like he said that it was his first attempt at robbery, so perhaps there was still that chance he could have been brought back, and perhaps they could have worked something out. Perhaps, but Miles himself is still a kid. He's still kind of, he's in that phase, I guess, where he's been Spider-Man for a year. He's kind of got his groove a little bit, and maybe a little bit too cocky at times as well, because like again, we kind of see him as the villain of the week, and perhaps the lesson is that regardless of whether he's villain of the week or not, you still got to take every villain seriously. And I guess you better know that now, right? You still got to take him seriously. Might be villain of the week, but now he's villain of the month, and it could have just been it could have been resolved there, but yeah. Oh, guess we'll
Yep.
never know. Guess we'll never know. But yeah, there are a lot of spider people in this movie. Let's talk about one of them in particular, though. Um, oh, so the last time on this, when we talked about into the Spider Verse,
Yep.
you mentioned about how I was asking you about New York. Um, there's things you're going to want to ask me about a character in this, and you didn't tell me which character it was. But yeah, after watching it, I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know which character you're talking about. So yeah, big stepper. um, Hobie Brown.
Yes.
Yeah, let's talk about Hobie Brown. I really liked Hobie Brown actually. He was interested. He was humorous. He was kind of self-aware, but also a little bit hypocritical in a funny way. But also in a self-aware kind of hypocritical way, it was deliberate. The whole thing about not liking labels, but then having labels for it was like what I mean. It's kind of like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk a little about Hobie Brown. So you mentioned that sort of before we started the podcast about you're not always seeing characters like this, and how accurate they are. So let's start there. I mean, I think I would say he's about as accurate as he is inaccurate. And what I mean by that is he seems to be, to me, a cross between different eras of British culture. So I think the most prominent one is the sort of 60s, 70s punk era. That seems to
Mhm.
be like the kind of the biggest one that comes through in his approach, his whole kind of anti-establishment, anti-authority. I don't like labels. I don't like consistency. I don't, what I mean, being anti all these. That's very much kind of that punk era. Like Sex Pistols, kind of era. That kind of thing,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
But then some of the words some of the slang that he uses is maybe a bit more modern. So he's like using the word like mandem. That's more of a modern kind of a UK slang era. So yeah, there's like a few different mixes, and there's also like he used the phrase what was it now I've forgotten was it cream crackered? No, that's not it. But he used the phrase that was Cockney rhyming slang, um, which in itself is kind of a subculture as well. So yeah, there's a few different eras, a few different cultures, all within British culture. But there's a few different things that seem to be mixed up into him. So yeah, I don't know if there's too many people like that around. But yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's fair to say he's inaccurate, because I guess his character is supposed to be that kind of amalgamation of different eras, or different cultures within a culture, So yeah, but still, yeah, I really liked Hobie Brown. I actually didn't realize until afterwards that was voiced by Daniel Kaluuya. Um,
Yes.
and I saw his name pop up, and I was thinking, wait a minute, Dan Close, who did he play? And then it took me a minute. Well, of course, yeah, Hobie Brown, right? Hobie Brown. But yeah, that was Dan. That was the Dan Close who was in Get Out.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I think that might be. I'm just thinking that might be the first. No, it's not. It's not. I was about to say it might be the first time I've heard him do a British accent, even though he is actually British. But no, it's not the first time. I have heard him do his regular speak before. But I think most films I've seen him in, he's doing a different accent. So like a usually American accent, I think, in most films I've seen him in. But yeah,
Yeah.
this one he's not.
Yeah, fun fact is that the director actually told him, "Listen, go all out," you know, because Um, something is there's something with like characters such as that, right? When it comes
Mm,
to that actual UK accent or uh slang and everything, when it comes to American movies, they usually tone it down so people at a wide can understand that character.
mm,
But the director said, no, go all out, go straight with, what you're saying. And that's why some points in the movie, when it comes, I mean, it goes with anything, but mainly with Hobie, if you notice, they'll have like, even with his name, they'll show his name when Miles says it, just in case you didn't understand certain words that he said, they'll go ahead because it
yeah.
is difficult to
Explain it.
understand it for us.
Yep, yep, yep. I spotted that. Yeah.
Yeah, so he did, he went all out with the accent and the slang, and that was great because it wasn't the typical like this is the first, well, not the first time, but the first time in a long time that I've seen a character like this, where I was like, oh, okay, this this is different. Okay. So I had to really wonder like how accurate is this? Is this over exaggerated? Is this something that, if I was from the UK, I'd be like, oh God, and cringe about. I don't know. So
Yeah.
that's why I was like so excited to get your opinion on this character because
Hmm.
I'm like, man, I told you, uh, we had so many characters, especially from New York, and the stereotypes is stupid. It's they're a
Mm.
joke, and it's gone to a point where people don't realize that it's a joke when they're doing certain exaggerated characters. They think, oh yeah, New Yorkers are like that. It's like no.
Yeah, I'm walking here. Move over, buddy. Up yours, man. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Hobie Brown, I guess yeah, I think it's probably fair to say there's a little exaggeration in there. I mean, like I said, I'm not sure there's anybody who's like that specifically, at least not that I've met. But certainly seeing like, of course you have like people who have elements of what he is. And that definitely exists. But yeah, yeah, I think it's fair to say it probably is a little exaggerated because it does mix, a few different parts of British culture into his character. Um, but yeah, it's like I say, it's I don't think it's fair to say that it's inaccurate because it's yeah, he's I mean if that's the case, we talk about the director telling him to go all out. I mean, I could definitely believe that. I imagine he had some kind of script. Of course, I mean, must have had a script, and he had maybe guidelines of what he can say and things like that to make sure it's consistent with the story. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're saying the director told him to go all out, I can very much believe that because like it does feel like that, sort of natural, like when he's all like, a man like Pav, a big step, that feels very kind of what you might say, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially like if you're kind of excited to see somebody. I mean, big step I haven't heard for a while, to be honest, but yeah, it's a real it's a real term, you know. Man, I heard it for probably ages at this point, but yeah, it's a real thing. And um Pav as well, where I think a Miles said something like, "What does that mean?" And Pav is like, "Oh, that means that we are friends, and he's we're but," and he explains it in like this
Yeah,
really kind
yeah.
of way, which I mean, it's kind of like it doesn't strictly speaking mean that, right? But it kind of does. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of does. Like, I mean, big step. I feel like bloody hell, man. I feel like it was just like a term used just to kind of like big somebody up. You might like if he's saying hello, like you might say like big step as in like you're a cool guy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's not far off to say like I mean, you wouldn't say it's something you didn't like for sure. So you know, when he was talking about, oh, that means that we're friends and I can't remember how exactly he explained it, but yeah, it's like not exactly that, but kind of, pretty much, yeah.
Then would you say like perhaps this character is almost like yeah, he's a culmination of different eras, but almost like a celebration of it too.
Um, hmm. Yeah, I guess you could look at it that way. I mean, I don't think of it in that way, to be honest with you. But yeah, I guess you could look at it that way. I mean, it's certainly not diminishing these parts. I mean, like I said, of course there's some humor in there, especially when he starts talking about the whole anti-establishment thing, and when he says like I'm against humor, I'm just kidding, you know. So there's definitely like a little bit of humor in there about with that.
Yeah,
But I think you can look at this as a celebration of these sort of different parts of British culture, and all kind of wraps up into this one anarchist of a human being.
yeah.
um Hobie Brown with the what do you say, how you even cool it under the mask. What, you think we'll let you know my secret well, you're gonna let you know my secret identity? Come off it.
I think
Yeah,
my
no,
favorite line from him is, "I hate the AM and I hate the PM," and like the PM is supposed to be prime minister.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I love that.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't even clock that, but yeah, AM and PM.
Yeah,
But of course, PM is Prime Minister. Yes, as well. Yeah,
yeah,
I hate the
yeah.
morning, I hate the evening, but PM also Prime. I didn't even clock that myself.
No, I only caught that like the third time through because it stuck with me. I was like, "Damn, you hate day and night?" Like, but then, when I was watching it in multiple playthrough, I mean, multiple, goddamn,
Yeah.
multiple watches, I was like, "Okay, let me see what I can catch," without going and looking at the detailed Easter eggs and all that. I wanted to see
Mm.
what I can catch because I knew we were going to have this conversation and everything, and that was one of the things that I caught. And I was like, "Oh shit, that's actually cool."
Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
good. AM, I hate the PM because, like, yeah, morning, evening, but then PM, and especially anarchist, anti-establishment. It makes
Yeah.
sense. Hate the Prime Minister as well. So yeah, Hobie Brown was a cool character. I mean, he quits. Yeah, he quits by the end and kind of goes back, but then he leaves Gwen
The
the
watch.
watch, the multiverse jumper watch, uh with her dad, that she then used because her one was deactivated. So he's a hero without calling himself the hero, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of helping save the day. But it's interesting, because we could get this a bit later as well. But are they saving the day? Right? Are they saving the day? Um, because like the whole thing was that if you change canon events, you could unravel the universe, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what happened with Miguel O'Hara when he found the universe where his family was alive, and then when that version of him got killed, he thought it'd be harmless to usurp him, and so he does. But then, what was supposed to be something harmless that ended up being the thing that destroyed that whole universe. And him having that very clear understanding is like, well, we can't keep doing this. Certain things, even though they're tragic, have to happen. And I think from a human level, we understand that as well, that there are these events that happen in our lives that, although they're sad, although they're tragic, and although we wish they never happened, the truth is that they kind of have to happen, because without that, maybe we don't get to be who we are, or maybe we don't understand things as best as we could, or maybe you know what I mean. There has to be these certain events that happen, and some of those events are very often very tragic. Um,
Yeah.
but now you have Miles where he knows it's going to happen, and you're literally asking him to sit it out and do nothing. Of course, from his perspective, he can't do that. That's his dad,
Yeah.
you know. But the bigger picture, if he doesn't do this, if he does save his dad, that whole universe can go, and then nobody's alive, So I mean, I guess it waits to be seen, because they did kind of hint that it's maybe possible that it might not happen, but also I feel like it'd be a bit of cop out if it doesn't, So you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, what do you think of that whole thing? Do you think they're doing the right thing by trying to save Miles Morales is the Jefferson Morales. Do you think they're trying to do the? Do you think they're doing the right thing? And how do you think it would turn out if they succeed in saving him?
I feel like they're both on wrong. I mean, they're wrong on both sides because with Miguel, I understand, like, you witnessed this happened, but I feel like if it happened just once, right? You didn't even really try to see what exactly took place. You only went by what you witnessed.
Mm,
And yeah, seeing is believing, but sometimes you have to understand, okay, what if, this universe is evaporating into another universe, like creating a whole new one. Um that was one thought that crossed into my mind when I watched it the latest time. What if because they have the What If series, and the What If series, um, you know, and this is minor spoilers for one episode, but for the sake of this conversation, so
Just
one
I'll see it,
episodes
but anybody
was,
else, yeah, be warned.
yeah, for Doctor Strange, right? He had this one episode where he was trying to, have, all right, so his canon event was his girlfriend dies. That was his specific canon event. And he was trying everything in his power to get that to stop from happening. Um, and no matter how many times he rewound time, it would happen again in the most ridiculous ways too. So he began to get so powerful that he could actually prevent it from happening. So he saves her, but because he saves her, the universe starts to, do the same thing. It starts to go up in like that black smoke or whatever. But the thought that crossed my mind was, I noticed that it's that same kind of look that spots have. The same kind of look, the same kind of smoky black look. And I'm thinking, what if it's just it's creating a whole new universe with those same people, that they're not just ceasing to exist and everything, they're just being transferred. And anything that belongs to that universe is being transferred to that new universe.
Okay, kind of bleeding together.
Yeah. So it does, it's not out of place, and it's not being taken advantage of people who are doing things like what Miguel is doing, where he's jumping into a whole new universe trying to live a life that doesn't belong to him. It's taking everybody but him. But if we were going by the theory of, okay, this universe is being destroyed, then you will be destroyed too.
Well, maybe it's the
That
universe has been destroyed, but he has Miguel doesn't actually belong to that universe, so perhaps that's why he wasn't destroyed because he doesn't
exactly,
actually
that's a
belong there.
possibility too. But I think it's also, you know that universe is being is being basically, we're taking this whole universe, everything from this universe, not you, Miguel, and we're moving it to this point. So you go away, and now this place is safe from you because you don't belong here. That was a thought that crossed my mind. And I feel like Miguel didn't do enough research on that. He just moved on because he was too busy grieving. He was devastated. He lost his family twice now. Um, and on the other hand, where you have Gwen and them, they're doing what they think is right, but at the same time, they're not working with Miguel. Not to say that he's making it easy, because
Yeah,
he's definitely not,
yeah,
but they're not really working with him to see what's truly going on. And they're just rebelling. They're like, you're wrong. That's that. I'm not letting this person die because, that's not right. And that's great and all. But if Miguel is right, then what you're doing is terrible. The life of one outweighing the lives of many. It's insane. I wouldn't like, either way, he's dead. So
yeah.
if Miguel is right, then what the fuck are you doing? So yeah, I get it on both sides, and that's what I love about this story. If you really sit and think about it, yeah, you could choose a side, but you can't outright sit there and say, no, my side is right. That's it.
Mm. Yeah, no, for sure. It's like the thing about emotions and logic. Like logically, if you know, if you get logically like, okay, if I save this one person, everybody dies, including that person I saved, right? Logically, it makes no sense. But
Yep.
emotionally, it's like if that one person to save is somebody close to you, somebody that you care a lot about, it's increasingly, maybe even possibly difficult to not make that emotional choice. You know, um, like if somebody's like, your son needs to die so thousands of people can live. Okay, logically, it's like one life versus 1,000 people's life. Let the one life go, and we can save thousands of people. However, that one life, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
how can you make that choice? And I'm sure there's some people out there were like, yeah, I'll let my parents. I don't give a fuck. I'll let them, I get it. Not all parents are that good, but
Yeah.
for the say the average person, it's just like having to make a choice between saving somebody that you care that much about, or letting them. It's not going to be an easy choice. I feel like a lot of us would probably make that emotional choice in that moment. And if you see a lot of shows and a lot of TV shows where that kind of there's similar sorts of things happen, where it's like, bad things can happen if you do this thing, but how can you let this thing happen to this person that you care about? It's an emotional choice. It's not a logical one. And Miles right now, of course, he's going to be more emotional than logical. Of course, he is. It's
Yeah.
his dad. You know, he's the younger, newer Spider-Man. He's all emotion, or near enough to all emotion. Of course, he's going to make that emotional choice. Unfortunately for him, though, he ended up in the wrong universe because he wasn't supposed to be there. And that kind of
Yeah.
leads into my theory, another theory that I have, that I want to say. But before I do, though, before I say that theory, you mentioned about the universes bleeding into each other, right?
Hmm.
Have you heard of the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
So, for those who might not know, the Mandela effect is this idea that, when something's happened, the way it's happened and the way you remember it is different. But more specifically, a lot of people tend to remember it one way, but it's actually something else that happened. It's like, wait a minute, like you have all these people that can swear, like, no, this one thing happened, but then you look back at it and it turns out it didn't happen. And it could be like the way something is spelled or a particular event, anything. But a lot of people tend to remember something happening in a particular way, and then when you look back at it, it's like, no, it actually happened a different way. Anyway, that's not the really what I'm trying to get into. One of the things that's interesting about the Mandela effect is some of the theories behind it and it's the idea of universes actually bleeding into each other, like multiple universes bleeding into each other. And the reason why you remember things differently is because you might remember something from one universe, but as it's bled into another universe, it's the other thing that's happened. So yeah, that's kind of that I thought of that. This whole idea of like why people seem to remember something one way, and when you look back on it, it happens another way, and you kind of like, no, I'm sure it happened this way. I'm sure I'm very clear in my mind this happened. And yeah, one of the theories behind that is the idea of universes bleeding into each other. So yeah, perhaps perhaps that's what happened with Miguel. It didn't destroy; it just bled into a universe and created a whole bunch of Mandela effects for people there.
I mean, you know, I'm so I'm excited for the next movie. I don't want them
Mm,
to rush it out because this one was a surprise of how good it was. And
mm,
there's so many ways I can go. Typically, you know, at least for me personally, I feel like a lot of movies I watch, I'm like, oh man, yeah, I can see where this is going. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing.
mm,
Because even if something is predictable, is about the execution of it that makes it memorable or not. Um, and I felt like with this movie, I did not know where it was going to go.
mm,
Um, Hell, even the first time I watched it, I was taken so off guard that even the things that are predictable in hindsight, it wasn't predictable to me immediately, at least. Like, the revelation of Miles Miles B. Morales, or the other Miles Morales.
Oh yeah,
You
Miles
know,
forty
because
two.
because
The
I did
Prowl. You
not
can call me the
think,
Prowler.
yeah, I did not think immediately, oh yeah, it's gonna be Miles, it's gonna be the Prowler. I don't know why. Because now, obviously, it's like an obvious thing. If he's not gonna be Spider-Man, then he's gonna be Prowler. Okay, cool. But I don't know. I just had it in my head. Yeah, Uncle Aaron is still gonna be Prowler.
Yeah.
Man, I can't wait till we talk about that scene too, because the use of that song, I know that song all the way back from when I was a kid, because they had this game called DJ Hero and they made a remix using that song. They made
Okay.
like 2 or 3 remixes using that song.
Wait, which
And
song at the end? Do you mean? Or I mean,
yeah,
it's got.
where the song that Uncle Aaron played, "Ain't No Love in the
Okay,
Heart of the
right.
City." Yeah, the use of that song. Oh man, I don't know. It hit me different. I don't know if anybody else
Okay.
experienced it, but for me, it hit hard. I was like, "Fuck!" I felt so scared for it. I really felt like, man, he's gonna beat the hell out of this kid. This is his nephew. He doesn't even care. But you also got to understand, like, you don't know who this is. This person, and who knows what type of world this is. You see parts of the city on fire. You don't hear any cop sirens. Who knows what kind of hell has unleashed in this world without Spider-Man? Like, this is you got to think about it from that point of view. So
Hmm.
if he really did beat the hell out of Miles Morales, that's not really his nephew. That's an alternate version of his nephew, but he doesn't know that, and he can't trust that.
No, for sure. And it's like you don't know. I mean, you know him, but you don't know him. It's like,
Hmm.
can this guy be dangerous? And as you said, like, what type of world is it? What kind of history do they have where it's kind of like you can't, you might not be able to trust people as easily, it might be that kind of thing where everything's like cutthroat each for themselves. So you see something like this and it's weird and it's odd and it's strange. It's like your initial reaction is like, we need to tie them up until we know what's going on, rather
Yeah,
than, oh, let's trust him because he could be dangerous. They don't know that.
yeah.
They don't know that. um but yeah, let's come back to that actually. But because I do want to just say my theory before I forget. So my other theory is that Jefferson doesn't die. Miles's dad doesn't die. Now that probably sounds a bit obvious because like it's a movie that typically have happy endings. But here's why I don't think he's gonna die. Miles was never supposed to be Spider-Man. So Miguel was saying that a police captain close to Spider-Man gets killed. That's a canon event, right? But Miles was never supposed to be Spider-Man. And whoever was supposed to be Spider-Man in World 42 and Earth 42, perhaps was somebody close to Miles's dad there who's already dead, right?
Mm.
So that canon event, I think, has already happened. That for Earth 42, a police captain close to Spider-Man or whoever's supposed to be Spider-Man has already died. And Spider-Man was supposed to be in was it 1610? I think Miles' world was. That was Peter Parker. Um, I mean, we don't know from these movies if he was close to a police captain. Um, but perhaps whichever police captain he was close to um, was supposed to is already dead or maybe dies later. But what we somewhat can be sure is that whichever police captain he's close to, it wasn't Jefferson, because Jefferson didn't like Spider-Man at all. So yeah, I don't think Jefferson dies because the canon event of a police captain being close to Spider-Man dying has already happened in 42. And whoever the police captain that was close to Spider-Man in 1610 either has already died or just isn't Jefferson.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's my theory.
I mean, that's actually interesting because Yeah, it's very possible that that could be the case. Um, but that's also what leaves this uneasy, intense feeling towards the end is because you don't know what's going to happen. You could,
Mm,
you know, we could come up with theories all day, but
mm,
it could be any of them, almost any
mm,
of them. And it's kind of, it's scary for the characters. And I haven't felt like this in a long time. I can't recall the last movie that made me go like, "Holy shit, you're really going to end it like this." Wow. Mind you, when I'm in the theater, I'm like the time was running on kind of long and I'm like, "Man, I don't know how." Like I was up to the part where uh Miles was on the train, or whatever that was. I think it was a train. I think it was like a super train, and all the spider
oh,
variants are chasing after Miguel
yeah,
and
yeah,
him
yeah,
are
yeah.
wrestling. Yeah, and I'm thinking like, man, this movie's going on a while. I guess this is where it's gonna end. But then he goes to the other universe and everything. I'm like, okay, uh, like when is this gonna fucking end? Is it gonna end here? I'm thinking they're gonna have a showdown in the city and all that. But then he gets captured. Man, there's so many moments in that area where they could have just cut it, said, "Hey, this is the end. It ends here. It ends here." I even thought they were going to end it as soon as he met Uncle Aaron again of that universe, because they could have just cut it right there and said, "Yeah, man, you okay?" Right before they shook hands, cut it.
Yeah,
But they didn't. They kept going and going, and I'm glad they did. But
yeah.
fuck,
Just a
when
little
they
bit
ended
longer.
it,
Just
I
that
was
little
like,
bit
I
longer.
can't believe it. I had this. Listen, like I had this lady in a theater. She had two badass kids, and they were annoying the shit out of me. And I didn't want to yell and be like, "Hey, cut it out," because she could easily turn around and say, "Listen, this is a cartoon." Even though it isn't.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a yeah.
Oh, she's like, "This is a cartoon. Okay, don't yell at my kids for me bringing my kids to a kids movie." She could have easily said something like that, and I would be like, "You know what? Today might be the day I argue about this. Today might be the day I be one of those jackasses on a video yelling at a woman with her two kids."
Yeah, and up on TikTok or something, just like somebody's gonna film it. Yeah, man yells at kids in a movie theater watching Spider Man.
Yeah,
You damn kids!
that would have been
Ah!
me. I was so close. I was so close to doing it. However, the ending was so good that at the end, when she was like, "What the hell?" We all started laughing. We all started laughing because that's what we felt like.
Yeah.
That movie was good. And that's what makes I hate going to movie theaters. I do. But this was a movie you had to see in theaters.
Mm,
If you missed out on that, man, I say they have to re-release it in theaters again. They will. If they don't, I'll be very surprised. But I feel like they will. Um, they did the same thing with No Way Home. I feel like they'll do the same thing with this one when they re-release it in theaters because I feel like they will. I will be one of the first people to go again because
yeah.
it's the reaction of people, and I really hope that even if people seen the movie already, I feel like we all get to enjoy it, and this was the type of movie that really brought that out where you're glad that you watched it with others.
Mm,
And even if you didn't, even the rewatches, it's fucking good because now you get to pay attention to all the nitty ditty details that they have and the little Easter eggs and everything. Unless you already watched something like New Rock Stars where you know everything already, then good for you. But it's a little more fun to catch it by yourself too.
yeah. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that by the time Beyond the Spider Verse comes out, there's maybe a cinema. So even if it's not like an official re-release, like sometimes some of the local cinemas would do like a special showing where they'll show like an older movie. So I'm hoping like some of these cinemas might do something where they'll have like Into, Across, and then Beyond, maybe all in one day or something where you can just like pay your ticket to watch all three. And sit through, I don't know, 5+ hours of animation. Well, it'd be more than about 6 maybe hours, I guess, but with 3 movies. But I'm kind of hoping stuff like that happens somewhere, where that you get a cinema that just kind of takes upon themselves to show all 3 movies. But well, we'll see. But speaking of the ending, let's talk a little bit about the ending, about Uncle Aaron, about the song you mentioned. Yeah, that song. I mean, I don't think that's a song I'm too familiar with, but so what's it called again?
Ain't No Love in the Heart of the City.
Ain't No Love in. Okay. So what is it about this song that when you heard it, you felt like, okay, this guy's done? Like,
It was just the vibe of the song itself, because it's like an old school song. It came out in the era of, like, you know, I mean, it was the first song that popped up in my head because of the title, but it came out around that era. You know that song "Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone."
yeah,
It came out in that era, and back then, it reminds me of movies where they talked about, like, the older generation, how they took no bullshit. They came home and they shot somebody. That's what it reminded me of. It reminded me of
mm,
that kind of vibe, and I felt like, man, he's putting this song on. This song is like, you know, how can I say? The song itself is not talking about shooting anybody. It's not talking about killing anybody, but it's talking about the harshness of, you know, the streets and stuff like that.
yeah,
You know, and I felt like with Aaron, he's sitting there and he's contemplating, like, okay, what do I do? I actually got my real nephew. You know, I'm not saying these are the thoughts that's going through his head. This is just what I was thinking and how I was
yeah.
feeling when I'm first watching this. What do I do in the situation? Do I cross this line? How far do I push it? You know, again, this isn't my nephew. I don't know who the hell this is. What if this guy is coming for my nephew? You know, he could do anything to this kid. And the whole time, Miles is, innocent. Like, he's still this bright eyed child. And he's like pleading with him. And honestly, the sound design was perfect because he's pleading with him over the music.
Mm,
And it's almost like it's going hand in hand. It's like, for me, the way I interpret it as, and maybe I'm thinking too much into it, but I felt like, the song was kind of like mourning this moment. Like, you know, it was like sad. Like, why is this happening? Almost as if, to go into it deeper and hopefully not cheesy, it's almost like Miles's father, the deceased version, right? 42's version, it is like, sad about this moment, about what could happen, what might happen.
mm. Okay, nothing I could see that. I think that's it. I mean, like I said, I'm not overly well. I don't think I've heard that song before. This movie, so I'm not too familiar with the songs. I guess it didn't really quite do that for me. But I feel like I understand what you mean when it's certain songs. When you've heard them before, they can kind of hit a little different when you hear them in other scenes. Um, for me though, like I just felt like watching this scene for the first time because like you were saying before, you kind of assuming that Aaron is Prowler in this world as well, especially he's picking up the glove and he's trying it on and all that kind of stuff. But then like when he turns around, he punches the bag and he's saying he's not the Prowler. He's like, you gotta have this moment for a little bit of, okay, so who is it? And then because we saw him get punched, right? We saw that, right? So what's
Yeah.
going on? If he's not the Prowler, what's going on here? And he's clearly holding the glove, right? And he throws it, and you see this guy kind of walking out of shadows. And I didn't clock this the first time I watched it, maybe not even the second time I watched it, but when you get introduced to Miles 42, and he's kind of perched up on that ledge type thing, right? And he swings down, and he kind of hold and drops. It's very similar to how Miles 1610 would move. You
Yeah.
know, maybe even spot on exactly how Miles 1610 would move. And I really like that very kind of subtle introduction, because like you see him, it's like, okay, who's this guy? He swings down, similar movements. So maybe some people clocked and thought, I know who this is, but you're not confirmed yet. He's walking, you see the back from the spikes and stuff. I think they showed his shoes. He's wearing the Nike Jordans as well. It's like, okay, you kind of getting more clues now.
Yeah.
And then you see him his face, but he's got a mask on, and he's like, "Who are you?" And then the mask disappears, and it's like, "Oh, I'm Miles Morales." And I love it when movies do that sort of thing, when they reveal in stages, you know, and even if like you don't get it to the very last moment, you know, it's just like that kind of staged reveal. It just adds so much to, you know, the intensity and the drama of that scene. And we don't know anything about Miles 42. He's dressed as the Prowler. We know the Prowler is a bad guy, but is he? You know,
Yeah.
we don't. And that's kind of the part of it as well. We really don't know anything about this version of Miles. It seems like he has no problem of killing him. It looks that way, right? But we'd have to kind of believe that he doesn't and make it a third movie. So, but yeah, I really liked how it ended. And like you were saying before, like they could have cut it any point and just had like, you know, to be continued, and it probably would have been fine, right? But it went that little bit longer to introduce on a very basic level, to let you know he's in a different world, to let you know he's in this danger, to let you know that he's surrounded by people he knows and doesn't know at the same time, you know, to let you know that, yeah, there are people that want to come and save him, but can they? Can they? You know, because I mean, Gwen says she doesn't know where to look. I'd have to assume Gwen must know he's in 42, because Gwen was with the whole, you know, people before, and so I assume somebody knows he's probably in 42. But even still, they can go there. What does that mean? They can save him. Do they still have time to save Jefferson? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so many things happening. So many things could happen, right? Even if they get it right, they could be getting it wrong, you know. So yeah, I really like the ending. That's a big part of one of the reasons I feel like this next movie, I'm really hoping they just knock it out of the park, because if they do, this could be just such an amazing trilogy of films. But yeah, big part of the reason I feel that way is because of the way it ended. You know, a whole, I'm sure you know this, a film could be great and then completely ruined by a crappy ending, right?
Yeah.
This wasn't that at all. Not even close.
Yep.
It nailed it 100%, just like bang. And the whole to be continued, that's even a tricky area as well with movies sometimes, when they end on the to be continued, because it could be like, oh man, is he gonna end it? Not this movie at all. They got it spot on, you know. So yeah, bruh. Bruh. But yeah, yeah.
Yep.
But they nailed it. They nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. I'm just so looking forward to the next movie now.
Yeah. And then when they said, "Oh yeah, next year," I was like, "Yeah, all right." Like, don't lie to me like this, okay? Especially the way how you ended it. No, don't do that to me. And then the strike happened. I was like, "Well, there you go."
I think I did hear somewhere that the movie is written.
Yeah, but there's a
It just
lot
hasn't
that
been
goes
recorded or something.
into the whole production of it, you know. So
Yeah.
realistically, even if the strike didn't happen, I didn't see them actually releasing the movie the following year. Like,
Mm.
because look how long it took them to make this one. Even if they're more prepared for it writing wise and everything, pre-production phase, you know, that's fine. But the actual production phase where you have like look at the animation alone of this.
Mm,
This is something crazy. So, it took them over the course of years to do this, more than likely, just on the production phase, like the animation and everything. And then even post-production, um, adding the special effects and doing the editing and making sure the audio was clean. And they even had some audio problems before, so they had to update the releases in theaters. uh, I just didn't see them realistically releasing a movie up that scale the following year.
mm,
It just it doesn't make sense. If I want it next year, but I only want it when it's done. Like, do not
yeah.
release it just for the time's sake. Make us wait if we have to. If we have to wait another 5, 6 years, I wouldn't want to wait. But
Yeah.
if we're gonna get another masterpiece, yeah, let's do this right.
No, for sure. And that's just kind of how I feel about a lot of like video games as well when they come out yearly. Just like, it's just too quick. It's too
Yeah,
quick. Take your time. You don't make. I mean, don't get, of course, I don't expect everything to be a masterpiece, but come on, it's too quick.
yeah,
And I'd rather them, you know, like you say, you don't necessarily want to, but if you can make a better film by waiting a little bit longer, I'd rather they do that than just rush something out for the sake of meeting some arbitrary deadline and it ends up being complete trash. Because
yeah,
like I said before, like the way this one ended, I'm so excited for this next movie. And I feel like this can be an amazing trilogy. But if they rush it, or if they just, take shortcuts, or, if they just get too focused on capturing on the hype, that kind of thing, and it's like they just put out something, you could end up ruining something that's really great, and something that we don't see very often, which is, 3 movies, in a series of films, and every single one of them is fantastic. Usually you have like, a few good, and some of them, one of them is just okay. How often do you get 3 movies where every single one of them just bangs? That's what
yeah.
they could be doing here. That's what they could be doing here. So yeah, I really hope they don't rush it out. I really hope they don't take some dumb shortcuts. I really hope they don't pay attention to any of those things about all these like stock brokers and corporate guys about, we must get it out within the fiscal year. No, get it out when it's ready. You know, get it out
Yeah,
when it's ready. God
exactly.
willing, nothing bad happens to delay it more than it needs to be. But get it out when it's ready. But yeah, they're on yeah. Oof. No pressure. No pressure. Um. All right then. Let's boy, we've talked about quite a thing. Let me just run through my notes real quick because um, who haven't we talked about? I guess we no, we talked about Gwen. We talked about Miles. Actually, let's talk a little bit about Pav. Uh, because he was quite an interesting character as well, quite funny. I liked his introduction.
I loved it.
Um,
Yeah.
we talk about skip the work, I'll wake up, skip the workout because I'm already buff and I don't want to get too big. He has like a very cool balance between arrogance and confidence, which is pretty much what Spider-Man is,
Yeah.
But he's like, even when he's like Pav, he's that guy, So that kind of balance between he's confident enough to be maybe confident at most, but not quite into that arrogant phase either. Um, but yeah, I liked him. He wasn't on screen much, but he did leave an impact, especially with the whole thing about chai tea. He's like, "Child, did you say?"
No, when he was fighting
Yeah,
Spot, and then Spot said it. He's like, "No."
yeah,
Oh man. But
yeah.
what I'm most interested about him is, you know, granted, I love his personality and everything, but his universe. You know,
Mountbatten, yeah.
remember they sent the variants to stop it. Like after Gwen and everything, after they saved the captain, it started to go up in smoke or
Yeah.
that black liquid thing. But they sent them to contain it. So is it possible that if you get there fast enough, you could prevent it from happening? You could save the universe. So if that's the case, then why not just do that?
Well, they did
So it
say. Oh, sorry. No.
no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that they did say that if we're lucky, we can contain it, but we haven't always been lucky. Now, I'm assuming they would manage to contain it this time around because we do see Pavitr at the end. So I'm assuming they managed to contain it this time around. But he did say that they don't always get lucky,
Mhm.
and when they say contain it, you kind of have to ask, well, what exactly does that mean? You know,
Yeah.
like I mean, do they kill the captain of Mountbatten? You know, do the spider people go in and take him out? Like, what do they mean by contain it? They're not really clear on that. They just kind of use this kind of very covert word. But I mean, the fact that Pav is at the end helping them,
Yeah.
you know, is he helping them because they did something that he can't stand? Possibly killing the captain, um, which although has to happen, you know, again, somebody close to you, like it's a tough choice. And
Yeah.
although you might understand that, yes, the world can unravel, and these are things decisions you have to make, and maybe you understand it from a logical point of view, it's not always about logic, and sometimes it becomes more emotional. So when they say they're gonna try and contain it, we might get lucky. We haven't always been lucky. I'm assuming they got lucky in this time because we do see Pev at the end. But what does that mean? You know, what does that mean? So yeah, that's possibly something that gets answered in the third movie. But for now, it's like, what does that mean for Pav's world? You know,
Yeah.
and Gayatri. You know, is her daddy dead? We don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's what makes me even more like anxious to see the next film because it, I have to have these questions answered. I feel like the writing that went into this one is too good for them to just slack. I don't think that they're going to
Mm.
slack on the next one unless the writing strike affected them. That's the only way I see them disappointing us in the next movie. That's the only way.
Mm. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I imagine they're using the same writers though, right? Or
I
they,
haven't I haven't looked
I haven't
into
really
it.
looked into it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess even if they are using the same writers, things like strikes and stuff, you know, especially when you're kind of out of, you know, you're out of what's the word? Maybe you kind of had a zone that you were in, and you kind of out of that for a while. You know, I'm kind of hoping happens though, and of course, I don't expect anybody to admit this because there's like legal issues and when it comes to strikes and stuff like that. I'm kind of hoping that during those strikes, people just kept writing, they just didn't tell nobody,
That
you
would be the
know.
best thing.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They just didn't tell nobody because, like, it's one of these things where it's like you want to keep that energy flowing, right? And you break for too long, and you could ruin that. So,
Yeah.
like, I'm hoping they just kept writing. They just didn't tell nobody. They're just like they had their secret calls. You don't have to tell nobody. Tell everybody that you want to strike. Tell everybody you went no. You know, I get that. Fine, do that. You know, I get it. It's all legal. This, that, and the other. But I was just kind of hoping that, or whatever happened, I'm hoping they did whatever they needed to do to make sure that this next movie is just every bit as fantastic as it needs to be. You know.
Yeah. I feel like it will be. I don't see them doing so good for the first two movies, and then the third one is a flop. But knock on
Mm,
wood.
yeah. I mean, I guess it. As it, I mean, I'm trying to think of examples where that's happened, where you've had like two great movies or two pretty good movies, and third movie just being complete garbage. You know, I'm trying to think of like recent examples. Or say recent, I say like in the last, say 10, 15 years sort of examples. Um, because I think like Star Wars comes to mind, but to be fair, Star Wars movies were just kind of garbage from the beginning. No, the Disney ones. I mean, by the way, they were just garbage from the beginning. So they didn't get bad. They were just bad. you know.
Yeah.
Uh, and then what's the other ones? Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I don't. They I know a lot of people love that movie, but boy, that was boring. That's boring. Like from the, I mean, the first movie, maybe the first one wasn't so bad, I guess, but other than that, it was just boring.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, can you think of examples of trilogies or a series of movies where they had a few good movies and the last one just was complete trash?
The last one, man. Hmm. You know what? No, I can't really. I know what's going to piss me off is that it's going to pop up in my head when I least
Right. You know what I
expect it.
mean?
But I could say off the top of my head. Oh, actually, no, I do.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is at least my opinion. The Dark Knight.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but with that
Yeah.
situation is, it worked against them because unfortunately, with Heath Ledger's death, that affected a lot. I'm quite sure that they had a lot, it was the Joker, and they could have killed him off, and they didn't. And they had they probably had some big plans for him in a sequel, but unfortunately he passed away.
Hmm.
But Dark Knight Rises was terrible in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I say I think thought it was terrible, but certainly, yeah, it didn't, in my view, hold up that well. Like the first movie, Batman Begins was great. That Dark Knight was amazing, and then for me, Dark Knight Rises was just okay. It was just okay.
For me, it
It,
was
it
terrible
mm,
mainly because like Bane was first off, Bane is supposed to be like the ultimate, you know, adversary for Batman. Just as smart, just as clever, just as, and even more brutal when it comes to his physique and good at fighting just like he was because, he trained under the same people. It was supposed to, this is the man that broke Batman's back. That was his
mm,
legend. Um, so to see, all right, you got this character, and yeah, he breaks Batman's back, but guess what? Batman was already crippled. He was already getting his ass kicked by a Catwoman in the beginning of the movie. He was pretty much semi-retired, if not retired. It was just dumb. Like I could go on and on. That might be a talk for another time, but man, I
mm,
remember watching that movie and being so disappointed, so angry, and already I was on shaky grounds when it came to Christian Bale's Batman. My opinion personally was when it came to Christian Bale being Bruce Wayne, excellent.
mm,
When it came to being Batman, not so much. And the reason why is just because for me, Batman has, core there's iterations, of course,
yeah,
but there's like core values that you have to have. And for Batman, yeah, we got to see the detective part. That was great. Seeing him analyze shit to really determine, how to tackle someone like Joker and all of that. That was great. Um, but we didn't get to see too much of the fighting, like where, especially in Dark Knight Rises, it did not feel like this was a fight between two highly trained because they were trained to be assassins, okay?
mm,
By Ra's al Ghul. So when these two fight, it's supposed to be one hell of a fight. Instead, it would look like a brawl, and not even a good brawl at that. So yeah, uh, man, yeah. Actually, I got to
yeah.
cheer myself up after that because now all the disappointment is coming back to me in waves. Like I was so disappointed, man. I was so sad that day when I went to the theater and saw that.
Yeah, I think my issue with that movie was that it felt like it got a little bit too ridiculous. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't mind films that are silly, ridiculous, over the top. Some of my favorite movies do that. Um, And the thing about the Batman, the Dark Knight sort of series of films, they kind of had this idea of, a more grounded Batman, right? That's
Yeah.
kind of how it started out. Now, granted, I know that if you look at the movies, there's plenty of times where it gets, ridiculous. It is what it is. Action movies just do that. There's plenty of times it doesn't make sense. But it at least felt somewhat grounded in the first couple of movies, right? This movie, like the Dark Knight Rises, I felt like it just felt like it took the ridiculousness a little bit too much. And I'm trying to. The example was that when Batman is like, he's like, say he's older, he's like, he's got a broke leg, and then he's like retired or stuff like that, and then when it's come to like, oh, he needs to be Batman again, like I think he sticks something in his leg or puts a brace on something, and he's like back to normal, and it's like, dude, really? Do you know what I mean? Like, really? And even like the whole thing about breaking his back, where Bane picks him up and breaks his back, and it's like, I was like, really? I mean, this guy in the in another film, like in was it? I think it was Dark Knight, where he jumps out of a window holding what's the girl name? Rachel Dawes. Rachel Dawes. Rachel Dawes.
Yeah. No, you
Rachel
got it
Dawes.
right.
Rachel Dawes. Jumps out a window holding Rachel Dawes, crash lands on the roof of a car. Falling how many feet from that window, and he's fine. But then it's like, and your back broke. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? Come on now. But that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate that they did ridiculous things in the previous movies. I get that. I'm not disputing that. But overall, they did still feel a bit more grounded, which was cool. This film it just felt like it just took a whole different direction, and it just wasn't doing well. It just didn't do it for me. Like, it's not Fast and the Furious. You know what I mean? Like, we don't.
For me,
it's just not.
Dark Knight Rises, this Batman felt more like, instead of really feeling like Batman, it felt like those grounded movies where, people are becoming vigilantes, like, like you got Kick Ass, Super. Super is actually my favorite film of all time. And what else was there? There was one with damn, what's his name? He was in Nelson or something like that. He was in fuck Natural Born Killers and also Zombieland.
Okay, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I forgot his name, but he had
Oof,
another movie.
yeah.
But you get what
Jeez.
I mean, though. Like any movie that involves vigilantes and it's like a grounded superhero movie, and it usually has like a bitter ending, right? Kick Ass is an exception because it's more of a comedy, but they did have some bitter moments. Um,
Woody Harrelson, by the way.
what's his name?
Woody Harrelson.
Yes, yes. Woody Harrelson had this film where he was like, I think it's called Special, and he thought he was like a superhero. So he's going out fighting crime and everything. Um and yeah, man, that's what it made me think of, but it's supposed to be Batman. It's not supposed to be that. I don't want that. I want Batman, okay? And by Batman, I don't mean he has to be like this over the top. Listen, Dark Knight Rises had it good. He wasn't the perfect Batman, but he was good enough. He was good enough to where I believed him. He was good enough to where I accepted that, okay, this is the iteration of Batman that they chose. It was good. Uh, Even the voice, it's been mocked for decades, but it's iconic.
Yeah.
It's iconic to the point where now everybody that does a Batman voice, they're
Yeah.
doing that voice.
Yeah.
And that's incredible because you have to think about it like, rest in peace to Kevin Conroy. With him, he's been Batman's voice since I was a kid,
Mm,
all the way up until recently. It's only been just a year, and I was surprised that was even a year that Kevin Conroy's been gone. But he's been the definitive voice for Batman until
mm,
Christian Bell came around. Then you could go ahead and say, okay, it's either that voice or this voice.
no, for sure. For sure. Yeah, remember in the first movie, Batman Begins, with the voice, and it was like, yeah, it got made fun of. It sounded a bit silly and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. It was so over the top. But I guess because they kind of ran with it, it helped it to kind of stick a bit more. Had they changed it for the next movie, it probably would have been awkward. So it's probably best they did just stick with that voice, that growly
yeah,
voice.
yeah.
Because I think, like I say, it kind of worked and kind of stuck and became so iconic in itself. So yeah, bit weird at first, but it was a good choice to stick with it.
Yeah, and I feel like it also helps that, The Dark Knight, was such a phenomenon. Like, when that movie
Mm.
came out, man, that had to be the first movie I ever went to personally where the audience applauded.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was the first time I remember experiencing that, and man, like that, yo, I love The Dark Knight. I so wish that we could see speaking of multiverses, we could have seen a universe where Heath Ledger never passed away, man,
Mm,
because he was incredible.
mm,
I'm not
mm.
just saying that because people typically like to praise the dead after they're gone. No, this man, I remember watching him in this movie called Monsters Ball. Don't ask me why I was watching that movie.
Hey, no judgment, man. No judgment.
But I remember watching him in Monsters Ball. I remember watching him in he was in some other film I can't remember where he was like in the knight's armor or some shit.
Oh yeah,
Uh
yeah, yeah. Nice
Brokeback
tale.
Mountain was really good. Um and then when they announced that he was going to be Joker, everybody was like, "The guy from Brokeback Mountain? Hell no!" Da, da, da. Yo, when he got in there, yeah, yeah, that was Joker. Everybody was shook that first scene.
Mm,
Okay, this man was destined to do something phenomenal, and it's so sad that he only got to do it once. So sad. Like, I really wish we could have gotten more.
mm.
But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a shame he passed real young.
Yeah,
But yeah, he yeah, definitely gave an amazing, incredible performance as the Joker. And I think, I mean, it's
absolutely.
been over 10 years since that movie was came out, and I think a lot of people still talk about it. It's probably like what, maybe 15 years. I was at 2008, I think that film was.
Yeah,
Um,
2008, 2000. Yep,
so
2008.
yeah, maybe come up to about 15 years now. But yeah, it's a performance that people still talk about to this day. People still hold up as one of the greatest performances in a movie ever. Not just the Joker, but any kind of performance. So yeah, it was absolutely incredible what he did and what he managed to do. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a shame that he passed away. Um, but yeah, I guess that's the canon event. That was a canon event that had to happen. Who knows what would have happened had it not happened? Maybe this world would unravel, and we won't we
We'll
won't be
start
here
World
talking
War
about it.
Three.
So that was a canon event. um, all right then. So I was just going through my notes. I feel like I think I've said probably everything I wanted to say about Spider-Man across the Spider-Verse. Oh, I'm probably going to kick myself afterwards and I think about something else. Oh, I should have said that. But I feel like I think I've said everything I want to say. So I think I've said everything. We spoke everything that's in my notes anyway. Do you have anything that we haven't talked about? Anything else that you want to mention about Spider-Man across the Spider-Verse?
Very briefly, because I
Yeah.
know that we went over time pretty much, but I do want to say that whoever's decision it was to make, I mean, whoever's decision it was to have two different voices for each Miles Morales, incredible. And the voice director, right? Our acting director, whoever chose the voice actor to be the second Miles Morales' voice, great choice. Because when you're watching the movie, you don't really hear the difference. You can hear the tone is different, but you think that's the same voice actor. It is not. is two different voice actors. And this second guy
Yeah.
is incredible because first off, it's not easy to just imitate someone else's voice. Very recently, we seen it happen with the show Rick and Morty, which is
Yeah.
a lot more difficult, maybe, but still, any actor that is able to do this, they deserve a lot of respect. And I feel like this guy, his name is Jerome,
Jerome. Yeah, yeah.
um,
I didn't even know that, I
incredible,
thought it was the same guy. I
right?
just seen it now when you mentioned it, I looked it up. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, that
Miles G.
I feel like
Morales.
that deserves a lot of praise. That guy, yeah, granted, he only had a few lines. His acting was so good, and we're not talking about just imitation. We're talking about the acting, because you could hear the coldness in his voice. The very first line that he says to him is, "Oh, so your dad's alive, huh?"
Yeah. You're like,
You
what?
know, like,
Your dad. You said he's alive.
yeah. And I'm like, oh shit, man. Miles, I don't know what to tell you, bro. Cause like you stole from this man. So if you tell him the whole story, yeah, you gonna fuck up. And I feel like that might come into play too. I feel like they might end up joining forces. Somebody's gonna tell him the whole story. And when he finds that out, like, yo, I'm supposed to have a different life, but you screwed it up. That's when they fight again. That's a
Mm,
possibility. I,
mm.
yeah. But I just really wanted to take a moment and praise that actor. Very, very good job.
I'm thinking though, like, yeah, I mean, I don't spot it when I watched it. I assumed it was. I mean, I did spot there was slight difference in the way they spoke, but I figured that I think it was the same actor. Um, but if they did go with different actors, then I guess the difference in the way they speak, of course, is very deliberate. Which means, well, I assume that means they speak differently just anyway. And if that's the case, then wouldn't Rio 42 have noticed something in his voice? Because I don't think she mentions anything about. She mentions the hair. She said, "Oh,
Mhm.
you changed your hair or something like that," but she doesn't say anything about his voice, the way he sounds. I don't think so. Shouldn't she have spotted that his voice isn't quite the same as her Miles?
Well, that's the thing. The imitation, like even when you first watched it, you don't notice that these are two different voices. It's just more of like how you talk. So it's based on the personality. He was just already acting weird, and that's kind of why she was looking at him like, "Okay, are you all right?" And she's like hearing him out,
Yeah.
and I didn't know what to think, but I will say this for me, and maybe I need to really really pay attention to this moment because every time when I watch it, it's like I just take it for I don't want to pause the scene and go back and do all of that. I just love
Mm.
this ending sequence, but I feel like there are already clues besides stuff in the background, but like with her face looks a little more like tired, like this version of her than the other Rio. And I might be tripping. I have to go
Mm.
back and look, but I feel like they added like an extra wrinkle or two to her face.
Oh,
I
it's
guess to,
possible.
show like the stress that she went through and everything,
Yeah, I mean,
with the absence
she's
of her husband.
yeah, pretty much single mother in this universe, and she does
Yeah.
say something about "I've got you to take care of, got me to take care of." So yeah, she could be more tired. And in fact, he mentioned something about having extra hours at her job. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, she could be more tired, and she's working more. And even though Uncle Aaron is helping out, she's still having to you know do the work and take care of of Miles, take care of herself and everything else. So yeah, he could very well be just a little bit more tired. Maybe
Yeah.
she's the struggling immigrant, or or the struggling not immigrant.
But yeah, I feel like, you know, he was probably being all cold and everything. Just like if you notice, she kind of snaps at him a little bit once he says, "I wish dad was here."
Yeah, it's just like Miles. Yeah,
Yeah. She kind of snaps at
just
him a
something
little
like that.
bit. So
Yeah,
I think like once, you know, the father died, um, both of them became a little more cold, a little more serious and everything. And Miles, who knows? Maybe this Miles is just, he puts on an act in front of her, And then when
Mm,
he's outside that door, he's his true self, and what we see. So I'm very, I can't wait because there's so
mm,
many ways that they could take it, and I just hope that the voice actors they stay put, do not leave,
mm.
because
Yeah,
these
pay
voice
him what he
actors
needs
are
to pay him.
incredible. The
Pay him what you
only
need to pay him.
Exactly, there's only one, and it's not her fault. I think it was a production fault. Um, in the India version, right? Mabatan, uh, that Spider-Man's girlfriend, or his love interest,
Yeah.
her mic quality was terrible. If you go back and listen to it, you'll hear it. It sound like you could hear pretty much like a not. It either sounds like a muffle or an echo. Something was wrong with it, and
Mm.
I'm surprised that they didn't clean that up ever.
Okay, I don't think I noticed that, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's only something I noticed in, like, because I watched it multiple times at that point. And I noticed that was something about her voice that was standing out. And I thought at first I was like, oh man, she must be new. But then when I listened, it's not her, it's the quality of the mic or the recording.
Mm. She I don't think she has many lines though, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's not too
yeah.
off-putting. Like, this is just a little nitpick.
Yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah,
But
no, I don't
yeah,
think
that's
just
about
so you
it.
got yeah, I don't think I noticed. Like it's probably because you didn't say too much. It was kind of just flew by. But all right, cool. Something to maybe try and pay attention to. If well, I'm sure I'm trying to watch it again at some point. So yeah. Oh, that's another thing to say actually. There's a few things that get brought up from the first movie that get mentioned in the second movie, and I did go back and watch some of those things, and they are all there. At least all the stuff that I checked. So about the spider having a 42 on it, that's in the first movie. The spider did have a 42 on it, but of course they don't mention anything like that in the first movie. You just see a spider 42, whatever that means, right? You don't know, and then you find out later that's the universe. Um, so yeah, they planned this out pretty well. I think like they didn't just like make a film and be like, oh yeah, let's pick up the pieces and um I think they did really well. I think they what's what I'm trying to say? Yeah, they planned it really well, because there's other things as well, like Gwen talking about Spider-Man dying, Peter Parker dying in her universe, and then in the first movie you just see them kind of like together as he's dying. But in this movie, you kind of see the kind of build up to it, but how it's all kind of mentioned. Um, and I think that one thing that maybe wasn't in the first movie is when they talk about Spot being in the collider when it exploded. You go back watch the first movie again. You watch that scene again, and I mean, he could have been there for sure, but because it's so unfocused on him, you don't know. You don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one thing where I was kind of hoping if I could see somebody in the background somewhere. But yeah, not quite. But even still, though, I feel like they planned this out well, by having those kind of inklings in that first movie that it get brought up in the second movie, where you're like, oh, okay, that's really cool.
Yeah. This is a great movie, man. And uh, I really appreciate all the work that they put into it.
Speaking of different actors playing characters, it's a different actor playing Aaron Davis in 42 as well. Donald Glover does the voice of Aaron Davis in 42.
You mean his father?
Aaron Davis, Uncle Aaron.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the movie database now.
Really?
Yeah, so Mahershala Ali is the voice of Uncle Aaron,
Yeah,
and he was in the first movie.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, looking down the list, it's also got Donald Glover. Oh wait, no, I'm stupid. Duh, of course, he was no, they because
Oh,
they had
yeah. The
Donald
the
Glover
re-
in.
the real
Yeah,
one.
no,
Yeah.
no, never mind,
You were you
never
almost
mind.
scared me there because I was like, oh no.
I just remember, yeah, they had Donald Glover in when they captured him in Miguel's universe, and they showed him.
Yeah.
But of course, actually, that's another cool thing though, because Donald Glover is in Spider-Man: Homecoming,
Yep.
and he mentions that he has a nephew in this neighborhood, and why he doesn't want these weapons going around and stuff like that. So there was a theory about, oh, we must meet Miles Morales, right? Because they don't actually mention his name in that movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that somewhat confirms it that he was Aaron Davis in Spider-Man: Homecoming universe.
Yep. I mean, there's rumors that they're gonna have like a live Miles Morales pretty soon. So we'll see. I just hope they don't rush it, and whoever gets the
Mm.
role does phenomenal, and that they're ready for it. That's all.
Yeah, his son also pretty cool as well, by the way. J.K. Simmons is in it as well as J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah,
J.
in the
Jonah
Lego
Jameson.
part.
Yeah. He's done that character like how many times now? Like he was in
So many times, and
in
so
the
many.
original Spider-Mans, the oh bloody hell, the 2000 Spider-Mans, you know, he was in those ones as J. Jonah. He
Yeah,
turned up
Toby.
in Spider-Man Homecoming. No, Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yep,
Or Far From Home, rather. It was at the end of Far From Home, and I think and also in No
and
Way
No
Home
Way Home.
as J. Jonah. And now, yeah, Spider Man in the Lego world for J. Jonah. So, but you know, he does that character so well, though. So I'm not mad at it.
Yeah,
I ain't mad at it. He
at
does that
all.
so well. Uh, Actually, this is real quick. Who else is in this movie that might surprise us? Uh, Andy Samberg as Ben Reilly. Ben Reilly was kind of funny, actually. I liked Ben Reilly.
Yeah.
Um, he was kind of funny, like yo, my muscular arms. But Ben Reilly, though, I remember Ben Reilly from my comic reading days. So he was a clone of Peter Parker, or rather, Peter Parker was a clone of him. It might be the other way around, but one of them was a clone of each other. Um, yeah, one of them was a clone.
Yeah, I mean the issue was they had a storyline that they were doing involving clones, and um for whatever reason I forgot what happened, but they took some time where it was like a gap in between the writing, or somebody quit or got fired, one of the two. So those plans, the original plans, they were kind of messed up, so now they had to go ahead and finish the story, and just, pretty much they just wanted to get rid of it. They just want to get out the way. So they moved forward and did something else. Um,
You talking about the comics, by the way?
yeah, in the
Okay.
comics.
Right, right.
And they never got to really go with the original plan, and nobody knows the original plan, if Peter was going to be the actual clone or Ben Riley was the actual clone. So by quote unquote canon, uh, to my understanding, Ben Riley is the clone, and Peter Parker was just tricked into thinking that he was a clone at one point.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that story got kind of confusing though. Like
Yeah,
it got mad confusing. So that, yeah, that's probably what happened about writers and I guess different directions and stuff like that.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, all right then. All right then. I think that might be I think that might be everything to be said, or at least everything to be said for now about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Or is there anything else to that you want to bring up, or anything we haven't mentioned?
Nah, that's it.
Yeah, I think that just
I
might
mean,
be it.
there's always
We've
gonna be more, but as far as what we needed
it's
to say, I think we covered everything.
yeah, it's one of those things where like you know, like you put a podcast up and then afterwards, after put up, I'm like, oh damn it, man, I should have said that. But yeah, I think we've at least said a lot of the main stuff anyway. So I think we're all right. I think we're all right. But yeah, I felt okay. That be where we start winding down and wrapping up this episode of the Uncivilized Arts podcast, talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. We talked about Into the Spider-Verse a little while back. That podcast is already up on the channel, so if you haven't checked it out, please do. And yeah, drop a comment, drop a suggestion, let us know what sort of movies or games or whatever else you want to say, hear us talk about, let us know. We'll see what we can do. Like, share, all that good stuff. I should probably set stuff at the beginning, right? I think you're supposed to set stuff at the beginning. Remember to like and comment. I think you're supposed to say, yeah. Anyway, if you've listened this far, I would assume you liked it. So it's 2 hours and whatever, 40 minutes nearly. 2 hours 40 minutes. So if you listened this far, I'm gonna assume you liked it. So yeah, hit the like button, hit the share button, all that kind of cool stuff. Drop a comment, everything, all that. But yeah, that's gonna be it for now, guys. Thank you for listening and or watching, and until whenever, if ever, peace.